show, and the closest thing we got was
Was
the
Knight
cop
Rider.
who faked
Yeah.
his death and came back as another person. So you had the man of mystery, and then you had the cool car.
But what's the point?
Gavin
What's the
Hayes,
problem with it?
TV reader. Now
What's
is
the
not the
problem with it
time to
being?
be sedated. Be awake.
Nobody likes the Ramones. Only old people. But what's the problem with Knight Rider being cheesy? The thing is, yeah, when I was watching Knight Rider, I was 7.
Yeah, I
I
was, like I said, I don't know you. I was at least in high school when Knight Rider was coming out. So
It premiered in 1982.
80, yeah, I was in high school.
It ran
Yeah,
for
it.
4 seasons.
Junior, so I was way too cool for Knight Rider. That was a kid
Mhm.
show.
No,
It was an
we had eight.
amazing kid show.
We had the A Team ended, Knight Rider started, then Knight Rider ended, and MacGyver started. And since we bought the show when it was already a couple of seasons old, they didn't have to do much of a season of a summer break for it, and we managed to get almost all of the episodes in a row.
Mm-hmm.
I think MacGyver aged worse than the A Team and Knight Rider
Yeah.
because the A Team and Knight Rider were not self-conscious. There you can enjoy the cheesiness. MacGyver, no, it got cheesy.
And speaking of New York Comic Con that we weren't speaking of, I noticed that a Bad Idea book became one of the hot books of the. I think it was Bleeding Cool or someone put a bunch, the hot books of New York Comic Con.
I
And one of
couldn't. Sorry, go
was that?
ahead. Well, I have a bad idea story.
Okay. So I think that the things that they were sending people to different spots to get the book. Well, there were actually 2 versions of it too. It was the name of the book was Save Now. I think it was only like a small book, like a 12-page book, but there were 2 versions of it. I made the balloons go accidentally again, saying 2 versions. There were 2 versions of it. And the logo was different on both versions slightly. It was like it was Save and Now, and there was like an arrow sort of above the Save Now, like that went, and then like the other version had the arrow going, the line going between Save and Now. That's how you can tell the 2 versions when you're looking at them. And there was just like, I think they had the same pages of art, but the dialogue was different on the last couple of pages. It was like only an 8-page story. The dialogue was different on the last couple of I didn't actually read the dialogue. I just placed it. But yeah, I was reading that. That was one of the hot books. But they're going on eBay, those 2 books, for $125. I was like, whoa.
Avoid the kayfabe effect.
That makes me the hot production guy. All right. Good evening, Kid Goblin.
Hello.
What were you saying about Bad Idea?
So I'm walking around the show, I think on Sunday, because I went Thursday, Friday, took off Saturday, and I went back in on Sunday. And the Bad Idea booth, I'm guessing, was not that far away from the Paper Cuts booth. And I wasn't really looking for it, but I saw the logo and it's like, okay, cool. Let me take a look at what Bad Idea has. Because I saw the logo for the booth first, and there's nobody at the booth. There was like a sign that said sold out or something to that matter. And it's like, you guys just up and left?
Sold out? They were gone.
And then they were gone. That was it. There was no. So it's like, I've never seen what a Bad Idea book looks like. Granted, when I'm in the comic book shop, I don't go looking for them. But it was like, okay, I'll see what they have at the booth. And there was nobody there. Then part of me
was
like,
their banners up still?
They kind of had a table. They had a banner that had the logo, and then like a hand sign that says sold out, and then that was it.
Because they were getting like 3 big, like 3-foot by 12-foot banners made. So I was just wondering.
I guess because it looks like the booth area was blocked off, so all you had was a table and this sign on the table. And I wasn't even sure if that was the full booth. Is this a part of it? Was this their marketing thing of just, here's a bad idea. Here's an empty area that just has their logo and that's it. And I'm
Well,
like,
I know, I was reading the hot list of hot books, and they said, they sent you. I guess it worked. Them sending you all over the con to collect their comics. So maybe they had more than one spot.
it is possible. It was small enough to like maybe have a pile of books there.
Yeah.
So while you're walking around and doing this scavenger hunt, that would make more sense. Because I did not see it as a spot of a big booth. I just saw it as, this looked weird. But then now that you said it, it might have been a spot where they were giving out free comics.
Right.
And so yeah, that was my story with Bad Idea. It was almost there, but it wasn't. But I have a photo of it on my Facebook. But I did take some pictures on the paper cuts portion. So they had a they had a bigger display than last year. So it's Mad Cave Studios, and they have like 4 sections. Their Mad Cave books, the paper cuts books, their YA imprint Maverick, I think it is, and then one other imprint, or I might be mixing it up, Maverick and then the YA one, and I don't recall. But they had some really nice display cases, and to sound kind of funny about it is that almost all the books that were on paper cuts section were all books I worked on. So it was almost like 3 shelves of just my work. And maybe out of the 13 books, 9 to 10 of them were mine. And I thought that was pretty individual titles. So it wasn't like it was the same set of titles. It was like, wow, that just actually worked out in my favor that it was like a bookshelf of my books.
Greetings, Mind the Comics. Hi, Gus. Hi, Tits. By the way, Gus, I ordered Craig Thompson's Habibi this week. Haven't gotten it yet since I got it from eBay. I can't remember what I paid for it. $10, $15 maybe shipped. It wasn't expensive. That's why. I'm always like, should I get this from from eBay, from Amazon? Let me see. So I always check how much they're going to cost. And a lot of times I just go with eBay because they're the smaller giant corporation. And I'm getting them directly from some shop somewhere. But often I get the used stuff on Amazon that's coming from some small shop somewhere too. But yeah, so I ordered that. And I also saw, we were talking about ginseng roots last week, which I got the 12th issue of, but I don't have issues 1 through 10 or something. So I was looking at how much they would. I went to their, pardon me. I went to Uncivilized Books website, and it's about like, with shipping, it's like $75, $80 for the whole series. So I went on eBay to see if someone, and like one comic shop had like the entire series plus the box for like $60 or something. I was like, that sounds a little too cheap. And they're like, we have to wait till we get all these in to send them to you. And I'm like, that sounds a little iffy to me. It's like, if they actually had them, maybe I would have spent $60 on the series in the box, because the box is an extra like $15. But
right.
But I was like, yeah, this price sounds too good to be true. And the fact that they're not going to send them to me until I couldn't, because at first it said, October 15th, we will send them to you. And then if you read the description, it was like December 15th. And I'm like, huh? That's a little bit of a discrepancy there.
Yeah,
I just didn't trust. The seller had 100% rating or whatever, but I just didn't trust I just didn't trust the listing to be able to get me that at all. It says, the Seth interview on Kayfabe was very interesting. It was. I enjoyed, especially near the end when he started waxing poetic about taste and design and how taste is just doing what you like. And speaking of Seth, I got Palookaville, number 24. It's strange to call like these issues because they're for the last how many issues? Since issue like 20, I think it was. So this is like the 5th issue in this format, which is a small hardcover book. And it also comes with a DVD I'll never watch. A DVD in the back about some puppet show he did as an art project, which there are pictures of in the middle too. And so, and it's funny. I was just watching. Who was it? Earl Grey. This was among the books he just bought. He's a YouTuber. He's German, but he does his videos in English. Occasionally does some in German too. But he was just, and he was one of the guys. He just doesn't quite get Seth, which is a lot of people. Seth is sort of. I always feel sorry, kind of, when I hear somebody say, I don't quite get Seth. And I'm like, because I was reading this and I loved it. It was just, to me, his stuff is brilliant. And I know it's not for everyone. Like, Clyde Fans was 300 pages of an old guy contemplating his life as a fan salesman. So that's clearly not for everyone. But I really like his stuff. And this one has in it, what is the name of it? Nothing Lasts, Part 4. And this one is kind of, this part of it is all about memory. And it's also kind of interesting because, if you remember, the only 2 issues of Palookaville I didn't have were issues 1 and 2. And over the last couple of years, I, found them on eBay eventually for a decent price. And, if Palookaville 1 is one of those comics they want to sell on eBay for $200, but nobody buys it at too high. No, I got it for $10 or $15. But finally, having read the first 2 issues of Palookaville, he's kind of revisiting the story of that in this issue, because first 2 issues of Palookaville, I guess they're autobiographical. You really couldn't tell. But they were about, a young guy working, like in high school, working a summer job at a restaurant, a fish place up in Canada. And in this is actually kind of autobiographical, where he's going through his memories of his jobs as a teenager. And what really makes it about memory is that, he's 60 years old now. So he doesn't remember everything. So there are times he's just like, there's a hole in my memory here. And there's even one where for 2 summers, he worked at like this environmental place where what he had to do was go out onto this lake and net a bunch of fish and count the fish and throw them back and maybe save a couple. They're counting fish. So he and this guy who's a couple of years older than him from high school, that's who he worked with out on the lake. And he's just like, I had such a great time. I think he said the guy was just about to go. Seth was maybe 16. This guy was 18. He's like, this guy really indulged me, because we would do. What I remember about that summer is being out on the lake and talking. He's like, I don't remember a single conversation, but I remember talking. So like they have like one page where their conversation balloons are just blank. And then to show what holes we have in our memory, he's like, that guy who his friend who he loved being out on the lake with left and didn't come back the next summer, but Seth did. And Seth was like, and he said, I was out in the lake with, he's like, I don't remember who I was out in the lake with that next summer. He's like, it had to be someone. I couldn't work the net by myself. But he's like, no memory of that second summer who he was on the lake with. and his looking back, his memory is filled with, and of course got me started thinking about my teenage jobs, going, there's people whose names I don't remember. I remember mostly like he didn't even remember. I can picture most of the faces of the people I worked with at my job I was at in high school, but my college job, I can't remember names, or I can remember a couple of faces now that I'm thinking of it, but it's like names I can't remember. And it's just like, and that's what it's him looking back on those days and wrestling with his memory and contemplating the nature of memory. And you've got to kind of like that stuff in order to get, and I can understand why people don't like that kind of stuff, but I really do. I like you have to really like contemplating an inner life, which is not everybody. But there was one, where's that one bit? He goes through some of the people he worked with at the restaurant, what he remembers from it. The girl he had a crush on, all sorts of fun stuff. Driving, he likes driving. But, the artwork, he does a lot of little panels. And sometimes the panels make an overall picture. Like in this one, the panels along the rows make an overall picture. But they're broken down into panels even with that. And sometimes he does that for whole pages. Oh, here's a guy he was talking about, and his face is the whole page, but it's broken down into panels so you can read it. So he's got that in here. Then he's got a little written piece and photos that go along with the DVD of that puppet show thing he did. Then it's interesting, in the back he's got his, what does he call these selections from Sketchbook 13? Where what he did is, first he came up with idea, pick a title from list, write a 3-page story. So he made all these titles in his sketchbook, and he's like, maybe I'll make up a 3-page story with those titles. But instead, he picked 5 flower names from that list and wrote a short story using, and this is just done in his sketchbook with ink and gouache. So he's kind of making up these they're little 5-6 page stories, blue, Delft, and a lot of them are about sort of the environment. Like there's a lot of pictures of trees and houses and walking along, and sort of just little one story was about an old house that he used to know, and so we get pictures of houses. But this stuff is much looser than his regular stuff, which is looser than normal, because as he said in that interview, he stopped trying to make the perfect line. And it's kind of, I can tell he stopped trying to make the perfect line and started using markers. But it's okay. You don't have to make the perfect line. But like I said, I'm a big fan of this. I always feel a little sorry when I hear people say they don't get it. I'm like, man, you're missing out. I wish I could tell you how to get it. But I can't. It's like I guess it's a really niche thing. A book about memory. Yeah.
Being that I dealt with some memory, I don't want to say issues, because it wasn't that I had. Yes, there's faulty memory in the sense of how I remember something to be better than it actually was. So I've been going through some of my Mego toys and stuff like that. Things that I had set aside that, one day I'll fix it, kind of a thing. And I've been fixing them, replacing rubber bands, stuff like that. For those who don't know, the Mego toys came out 50 years ago. They're held together by rubber bands, and those are breaking and snapping and stuff like that. And some of them turn out to be fairly easy to fix. The clothes can be easily washed with a little bit of woolite, of all things. And it looks better, once you give it a cleaning and whatnot and fix it and stuff like that. I started looking at some other Mego stuff that I bought when I was working at Marvel and making some good money. I bought a lot of stuff on eBay. Things that I kind of coveted as a kid. and one of them was the Mobile Crime Lab that was made by a company called Empire. So this is a company that would make vehicles for toys from other brands. So basically, they got the license from Marvel to put Spider-Man on this thing. And it just so happens it'll fit an 8-inch Mego Spider-Man toy. And in the catalog, these will usually be put next to each other.
Right.
So depending on the department store catalog, they're like, here's Spider-Man stuff. And there happens to be a Mego Spider-Man driving this van. So I bought the van off of eBay. I don't remember what I paid for it, but I thought it was more complete than what it really was. So in my mind, the van is in the box and it has the parts to it. And I go to get it and realize not only is it not in a box, it's missing all the accessories. I thought I had at least half of the accessories.
Wow.
And I thought, all right, I don't have the accessories, but I know the van is complete. And it turns out it's not. So it's missing. I have it right here because I did a video the other day for it. So here's what the van looks like. Toy van. So it's missing the sunroof, I guess they would call it. It's a door. That's where you usually put the character in. It has a door here that opens up. But I never realized that it was missing the rear bumper. And it's missing one of these. I don't even know what to call it. It's almost a they're snaps. They just snap into place.
Some decorative piece.
It's a decorative piece, and I'm missing one of them. And,
in your mind, that was all there.
In my mind, it was all there. I even went to look at some pictures because the van I used to have it at Marvel. I used to have it behind me at Marvel. So I found the one picture of myself in my office that has the van in the background. Sure enough, it doesn't have the angle that is shown, does not show the back bumper. And it's like, wow. I really, in my mind, I guess as I thought about it, I have that. It's in the closet, but it's just about complete. And it's like, it's not even in the box. And it's wild that I'm not sure if there was a chance I had the box and I got rid of it because those usually don't survive as it is. It's just cardboard. But I thought I had more to it. And it's like, it is kind of funny. And it's like, wow, memory's a bitch. Completely. It's like, I remembered it another way.
Is Seth mostly for other artists? I don't even think he's an artist. I think he's an artist. No, I think when thinking about it this week, I was thinking that, as I said before, you really have to be interested in people's internal lives to because I think Seth is a lot about nostalgia, but it's also about the characters' inner lives. And I think there's a lot of people who just aren't interested in reflecting on their inner lives. I mean, in their own everyday life, for whatever reason, they're not interested in contemplating their inner life. And therefore, I don't think they're interested in comics that contemplate inner life. I think that has more to do with it than anything that I can think of. Because especially in my youth, I always was baffled when I learned whatever behavior was going on with someone, whatever we were doing. It always stunned me when I came to the realization, that person doesn't want to think. Because there are people who just don't want to think. Give them, because I'm a problem solver. I like thinking. Give me a problem, I'm going to solve it. But there are people who will have whatever problem, minor, major, and they will just be not interested in solving that problem because they don't want to think about it even for a moment. They want to just keep going for, and you always hear people in literature and whatever say, don't ever look backwards, keep going forwards. Those are the people who aren't interested in contemplating any kind of inner life, inner thoughts, inner, reflection. And I really think that is what Seth does, that people just don't like to reflect, don't get Seth. I think a lot of people attracted to comics are attracted to metaphors for inner life rather than direct examination. Yeah, I think so. And they're also attracted to the escapism. This isn't really escapism. This is, think about the stuff you're trying to escape from. That's how I am, which is why imagery appeals to me. I like direct examination, so that's one of the reasons. But like I said, I think a lot of people just don't like direct examination.
Would you say what Seth does is an exaltation of the mundane?
I don't think it's mundane. Like, I would say that, like, that's more Harvey Pekar.
Mm-hmm.
Seth is more like, what do they call it? Navel gazing. It's more because he's interested in the big issues of his life, but he's looking at them in hindsight. And he's kind of interested in who he is by examining who he was. Or his characters are, at least. Like I said, the Clyde Fans book is 300 pages of an old man alone in his apartment contemplating his and his brother's life. His brother was a character too, and how I think they got the business from their father. And Fans was a declining business. Their whole, because I think it started in the 50s, and I don't even know what year. Like, Clyde Fans may have taken place in the 80s or the 90s. It took them 20 years to do it. So, but like, Fans were, when he started, when his father gave him the business, Fans were a big thing, like in the 50s or whatever. But air conditioning slowly took over, and people had less need for fans. But still, he was in the business. And so it's all about him looking back on his life and contemplating it. It's not even the type of contemplating your life that's about the plot, because there's some types of contemplating life that are about the plot, in terms of, how did I get here? Sort of, you're contemplating your life and you're saying, how did I get to where I am right now? You go back in time and examine the plot, kind of, and you see the plot that got you here. Seth's stuff isn't even like, there's some plots going on back there, but they're often sort of, but being that it's sort of real life, there's no, our real lives don't have plots. We try to make plots out of them. We try to see how different areas of our life connect. That's if you're contemplating it. And that's what he's doing with it. He's trying to see how different areas, he's trying to make a plot out of his life somehow. Trying to look back on his life and see the plot.
So it would be a psychological exploration of self.
Yeah.
Through the fictionalization of your own life.
Yeah, that could very well be it. But listen, that people don't like examining themselves.
Right.
So
psychologists are people who need a lot of patience. And if you're a reader, you may not have the patience to handle that type of story that isn't really a story.
Right. And like I said, years ago, what really got me to understand Seth better was in some interview I read with him in the 90s, where he said, it's not about the plot, it's about the feeling. And up until then, 24-year-old Jared, I was always about the plot. It never occurred to me that a story could not be about the plot.
Right.
Because that's just what stories were about. So that really made me look at his stuff in a different way. I mean, I liked it before then, but after then I could really, and I've given It's a Good Life If You Can't Weaken to quite a few people, and only about a quarter of them like it. And smart people who like good comics, but even then they're like, yeah. I'm like, oh, I feel sorry for you.
Mm-hmm. So if Tom King accepted that he has mommy issues, he would do a Seth type graphic novel and lay off of Batman.
It could be. But still, what I really like is I actually read this twice on Wednesday. I got it. I think it came on Tuesday, and then I was commuting in on Wednesday. So I read it. I read it in the train ride in, and I read it on the train ride back. That's how much I enjoyed it. So, like I said, whenever someone says like, and I understand that everybody doesn't like his stuff, but still, it makes me. I'm like, you can't get it. That makes me a little heartbroken for you, because it's good stuff.
Is Seth most? When you read Seth stuff, does it look like he's trying to get stuff out of his system, or is he trying to be profound?
I don't think either. I think he's doing this because it's what he has to do. I don't think he thinks. I think all his deep thinking is in the comic. It's not about the comic, kind of. And seeing in that interview with him led me. He is not. He doesn't. He strikes me as more emotional than intellectual. Not that he's not intellectual in some way, because he's obviously bright enough. But I wouldn't say he's an intellectual from reading his stuff and from seeing his interviews. But he has some interesting, like I said, especially at the end of the interview, that Sleepy Reader, when he started talking about why people make art and what taste means, and it was simple stuff he was saying. Like I said, it wasn't complicated stuff, but simple isn't easy either. It wasn't like deep intellectual stuff. It was simple, well-observed stuff.
So because I think there is a compulsion, but there is a compulsion there, isn't it? It's just simply, and that's what I took from the interview, is that even though it feels the need to create stuff, it doesn't think about getting to the end.
Oh yeah, right. He's gonna be always making stuff, I would think. I think he makes stuff because like you said, he feels a compulsion to make stuff. I know what that means. It's like you make stuff because you that's what brings you joy. Even if it's hard, even if it's tough doing, it's what brings you joy in life, so you want to make it. And I think there's definitely some of that going on in here. Yeah. Seth is not pretentious at all. Yeah, I think he's very honest. There's no pretentious. I agree with that.
I don't think you need to be pretentious to be intellectual.
You don't.
If there are themes that he feels like exploring, and they are a bit out of reach of the common person, I don't think he should refrain from exploring. Compared, for example, to Grant Morrison, who has a lot more of an ego, but he does feel the need to explore stuff. It's just that I think is not that their style is similar at all, but if Seth feels the compulsion to explore ideas that are not what most people want to think about, which in this case is thinking about yourself in a way that benefits you, and if somebody wants to read it, okay,
right.
Which is different from what Morrison did. Because Morrison certainly had a time of his life when he wanted to show everybody how smart he was.
Right.
And to me, that was Doom Patrol. Because Animal Man's fun in a lot of places, but you can see that he's trying to work with ideas that nobody ever thought of. But in Doom Patrol, he does a lot of name dropping.
See, I don't. I think I haven't read a ton of Morrison, but I've read enough to have some judgments on him. I think he likes coming up with ideas, but not stories. Because I always say, Grant Morrison is the master of the first issue.
Right.
But he never has an ending in mind because he likes ideas rather than stories. He likes going, oh, wow, what if I thought about this and put this in there? And that's what but there's no story there. There's, he's like a chef with no idea what the end product of his cooking is going to be.
Right. Yeah. I think because the storytelling itself in a Grant Morrison comic is pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Yeah. When people tell me,
always intriguing.
Yeah, because I've had people tell me that, oh, I don't understand Grant Morrison. Why not? I mean, it's not very difficult. Yeah, it does put in a lot of ideas, but
and having known one of his editors, I know he likes to get stoned and come up with ideas.
Yeah, happens. Yeah. Seth, for example, said he never took drugs. He said in the interview that he never. But yeah, if you're, which is kind of funny because Morrison likes. Morrison is a bit like Alan Moore when he does exploration of self. He does seem like he has the need to indulge in psychotropics in order to explore oneself, and Seth doesn't.
Yeah.
So how do you explore yourself if you're scratching the surface of yourself?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's not the surface, is it? I still haven't read a Seth book, but I don't think people would have stayed with him all these years if there wasn't some juice that people could get out of that story.
Oh yeah, like I love it. I read a Seth book and I find it interesting, profound in some way, and it gets me thinking about my own self. Like I said, I was thinking about my own as I was reading this, my own high school jobs, and saying to myself, what do I really remember about them? Because that's what this was about. What does he really remember about that person he was and those jobs he worked when he was 16, 17, 18? And I can think that who was I? What was I thinking back then? And I find it an interesting thing to contemplate. See what Sleepy has to say. He seems very set on doing things that are true to himself rather than others' expectations. Yeah, I think that has to do with the internalized nature of it. Morrison's more of a showman, enjoys playing with the audience and with pop culture. Oh yeah. Right. I don't think Morrison would be doing it if he wasn't a star at DC. Seth would be. He is doing it, not being a star at DC. But terrific book. Let me see Tit Goblins had something about here about Marie.
About Marie Javins, yeah.
Yeah, I read an interesting profile in a 90s Marvel comic on Marie Javins. Did you guys work with her? Seems like yes, I worked with her for many years. She's a friend of mine, though I haven't spoken with her much since she's been busy being a editor-in-chief. But before she used to this is when did she become editor? When did she move to California? Well, she still has a place in Jersey City too. When did she move? When did DC move to California? 2008.
I think that was the time period.
Right.
I don't remember what it was off the top of my head, but yeah, around that
time.
So
before she went back to working at DC, well, before she started working at DC, and she was supposed to be in a temporary basis. She used to teach a coloring class at SVA, School of Visual Arts in Manhattan. And I got some of my teaching starts when she used to have me in once a semester to teach them comic book production. So I'd come into her class once a semester and teach them comic book production. But yeah, she's an interesting person.
Yeah, when I was at Marvel, she was editor, and I knew her pretty much only as an editor. It was later that I found out that she was also a colorist because when I started working art returns, I would be returning her artwork to her. And while she was doing, she had left editorial and was, as far as I was aware, lettering, but I didn't know she was traveling. So she was doing that for a while too, just traveling all over the place. But yeah, and then
at
she ended
that
up at
time
DC.
once again Bob Harris took care of her. So what happened was she eventually in the late 90s decided to leave staff because she wanted to travel more. As a matter of fact, I think Marie's World, she's got a blog too. MariesWorldTour.com is still up, where sometime in like 2000 or 2001, she decided she was going to circumnavigate the globe taking only surface transportation. So she took a cargo ship. She took a train from New York to LA, took a cargo ship to Australia, then took another ship up to India. And she actually there was a couple of times she had to take planes because wherever she was in the country, they went, no. That's too dangerous for you to be there. You got to take a plane. So then she went all through Europe on trains too. And she was on buses, all that. So she is a real traveler. But when she was doing that too, Bob Harris always made sure she had coloring work. So she'd color everything she could for like 6 months and then travel for 6 months. And then, of course, when Bob Harris needed somebody to fill in New York while they were all moving, that's when she got hired at DC. And I knew she was going to run. First of all, it was only supposed to be a temporary job, but I knew she was going to be moving because when someone offers you a big editorial job at comics, you can't turn it down.
Right.
And I knew she would. She's a well-liked person in general. She's like Mike Martz. In comics, and for any given, like I think one of the reasons she got into be editor in chief, she always said she always thought she'd get to be in charge of Vertigo because she's really more of an indie comics person. She was always she started in Epic, and so she always did the weird comics at Marvel. So she always expected to be in Vertigo at DC, but they got rid of that. But to me, the reason, like, besides the fact that she's competent as an editor and a person in general, which not all editors are, believe me, she's also not a lightning rod. She could be everybody's compromise candidate. So, like when Bob Harris is eventually going to wear, he wore out his welcome, but that's what Bob does. Dan DiDio wore out his welcome. I don't know him. I don't know anything about him. But once again, he seems like one of those strong personalities that wears out his welcome. Marie doesn't wear out her welcome. She does her own thing. I remember she told me some story, or someone where when she was first a group editor, I think I don't know what position it was. She got a promotion at DC to group editor or whatever. And someone that came into her and was like, "Oh yeah, nice, glad you got the promotion. Oh, I look forward to collaborating with you." And she's like, "No, I really don't do that." He's like, "Huh? What? I don't really collaborate with people. You do your thing, I'll do mine," or something like that. I was like, "No, no collaboration here. I'm in charge of what I'm in charge of." So, like I can definitely see, and she could probably be in that job for as long as she wants to be because she's just not. She's not a lightning rod.
Excuse me.
Mm-hmm. Did you guys draw on her wall of bovines? Nope, never did.
No, I'm not even too sure what that is.
That was in her office. She had It's such a female thing. You know how growing up, your sisters always had the one animal they liked.
Oh, okay.
For my sister Jody, I think it was elephants and Dumbo. For my sister Jennifer, was it raccoon? And they collect that animal of whatever. For Marie, it was cows, but she got tired of people giving her physical cows, so she started collecting drawings of cows. So artists, Marvel artists would draw a cow for her office wall. So she had a whole wall full of cow drawings by various artists.
That seems vaguely familiar, so I think
They
I
still
know what
exist
you mean.
somewhere.
Yeah.
I know only a bit of Seth, Chester Brown, and Joe Matt. Seth seems so out of his league in that company. No, but still in the same neighborhood. Is undoubtedly much more restrained and discreet. Yeah, they're so completely different. They're actual comics, that is. I'm a big fan of all three of them. Joe Matt just sort of defined an era for me too. I just reread Joe Matt's Peep Show. Oh, I reread the collected graphic novel of it after he died, and I reread all the issues like 2 years ago. And for me, like Joe Matt, it's too bad he didn't do more work, but to me, Joe Matt is one of I've said those three guys are my big three late 80s, early 90s guys. For everybody else, it was, Todd McFarlane, Jim Lee, Rob Liefeld, Eric Larson. For me, that era was defined by those three. And especially Joe Matt, because his comics were autobiographical and they're all about him trying to be a cartoonist. At the same time, that was what I was doing. So I really related to, but like I said, completely different. Chester Brown stuff was just weird until he started getting into the autobiographical stuff. Chester Brown stuff was just nuts. Skydiving Frankenstein was just brilliant. But meanwhile, Seth stuff is all, as we were talking about before, internal. So three completely different things and not funny. The other two, there was funny going on. There's not much funny going on with Seth. So completely different things. So you like those three more than Klaus? Now, Klaus and I don't think I like them more. But Klaus and Peter Bagge were also in that same era for me. But like I said, right around the late 80s, early 90s. Those three kind of went together because they were friends up in Kent. So you would read about them in each other's work. And like Klaus and Peter Bagge were kind of on their own. But yeah, I'd put Klaus and Peter Bagge in that same. Matter of fact, those five probably defined the late 80s, early 90s for me. Because Hate was 1990, 8 Ball was like 1989, Palookaville I think was 92, Peep Show was probably like 1988, and Yummy Fur I think was also 88, maybe 87. But I kind of discovered them all in my late college, early out of college years. They were my guys. It was always an event when one of their books came out. What comics did you get this week, Wilson? You went to the comic shop. You're still muted.
Yeah, so I went to the comic book shop to pick up my 4 weeks worth of books. It sounds like a lot, but it wasn't, because each week was like 2 books that was on my pull list. So I got a free set of suspenders.
Woohoo!
Deadpool suspenders, because apparently it's National Suspenders Day yesterday, and so these are official license from Buckle Down that made Deadpool suspenders. And if it wasn't, if they were giving away for free, I would not have a pair. So I got that just for showing up. So that was a lot of fun. So the books that I got and have not read is Transformers #1.
And we'll get you big so you can show us the covers.
So it's Transformers #1.
Uh-huh.
So this is by the new to me imprint of Skybound. And
that's right. They just
right, and I know that is connected to that book that you picked up,
Void Rivals.
Void Rivals. So on the back of this, it's basically showing us what they're calling the Energon universe.
Ah.
So Void Rivals looks like that's going to be a continuing series because this showcases issues 4 and 5. They're also showcasing the G.I. Joe books, so Duke and Cobra Commander are part of it. So as far as I'm aware, it's the Hasbro universe. And I'm not too sure how Void Rivals connects to it other than that review that you gave it.
Yeah.
About those characters. So maybe they're introducing those characters. I have not read it.
Transformers?
Transformers is being done by the writer and artist is Daniel Warren Johnson.
Okay. I thought I saw him doing that.
Mike Spicer is the colorist. And it's lettered by Russ Wooten.
We don't care about the letterer.
And then you have, we got to care about the letterers. and then you have all those other covers.
Wow.
That's part of it. So that's the cover team. I do not know how many covers they actually made for it. This is the cover that I saw, and I grabbed it because it was Optimus Prime. My brother has read it first, and I was curious on what his thoughts on it. It's like, I need you to read it as well. I believe they're just restarting the universe anew. So that's, I think, what attracted me to it, is that I don't really have to worry about the back issues of the other companies. So completely fresh start with characters that you're aware of. And just by flipping through some pages, it looks like some humans finds them in the Ark after it was crashed. And I did spot that one Transformer, Skywarp, who was in the book that you read.
In the Void Indigos one?
So I believe there's their connection there. So I don't know if the Rivals will follow those alien humanoids that you read, and is it going to tie everything together? So the fact that other people have reviewed the book and said there are some people that really hate it, some people that really likes it, and it's between the people who've known it for years and people who just have a passing knowledge of Transformers. So I figured if there's enough people that dislikes it, I think I need to find out why. And so far, the art looks fine, and I'm not too sure why anyone would be upset with it. My brother had only mentioned one thing, and it's a very unique perspective. He does not think the Transformers are in the right scale to the humans. Which is like giant robots, but he has a more love to the Transformers, so I think he's more into the zeitgeist of Transformers. The other books I grabbed are, I don't have them really in any order. So here's Amazing Spider-Man number 35 with like the goblins on the cover.
Okay.
I have not caught up on Spider-Man books, so from what I understand, the first 30-something issues a lot of people disliked. So I do not know how they're feeling about the next ones. And I could understand what they dislike is that I've gone back and I've been reading Spider-Man books on the website, on Marvel's website.
Marvel Unlimited?
Marvel Unlimited. So because since they do give us the code in the book to read your books digitally, I do have an account and I get them digitally. I did find out, I guess the account that I have gives me access to a lot of the older books. So I'm reading some of the older books that way. And by older, I just mean the previous runs of Spider-Man before this current run.
Transformers again? It must be so boring drawing nothing else than giant robots 20 pages a month, unless you like drawing giant robots.
Exactly. If you like drawing it, or if you like the paycheck it gives you, I would also be drawing robots all day. And so because I picked up the Spider-Man book and I went back to read what kind of led to these, those stories have been pretty good. And I feel that there's this, I guess, disconnect between the writers where you have one set of writers fixing the previous set of writers' stuff, then the newer set of writers are like breaking down that set. So it's like, I'm not too sure what's going on in the Spider-Man story. It's like he's almost made to be like brought up to a certain height and then smashed up again. And it worked for Spider-Man to a certain degree, but for me, I feel that you're doing it a little too much. And
you've seen it before. There's the problem.
I've seen it enough times where it's like, oh, let's not keep beating up on Spider-Man. Another book I picked up just because it's a #1 and Dan Slott's working on it, The Superior Spider-Man Returns.
Ah.
So this particular book is written by Dan Slott. He wrote the story. The script is done by Christo Gage. Hopefully I'm saying that right. Christos Gage.
Okay.
And this one has a bunch of artists. So you have Mark Bagley, Ryan Stegman, Roberto Ramos, no relation, and Giuseppe Camunicolo. I don't know if I'm saying that. Camuncoli. I'm going to forget that after I say it. So I'm guessing it's because it's a bigger story. You have so many artists working on this particular project. I know nothing else about it other than it's a #1 issue, and I figured I do like the stuff that Dan has done with Spider-Man. I know Superior Spider-Man is when Doc Ock's brain was in Spider-Man's body. I don't know if this continues that story, so I'm not too sure. So that's my Spider-Man books that I had gotten. Superman is okay, it's issue 7, but Legacy is 850, so it's an anniversary issue. I keep forgetting to take these out because it's so much glare. So it's an anniversary issue, big cover, but not a split cover. It almost looks like it could have.
Yeah.
And other than that, I know nothing else about it. Let's see. Creative team.
Well, you see, he came from the dying planet Krypton.
No way. What a great idea. All right, so this one has a large cast of people. Well, not that large. So Joshua Williams is the writer. The artists are Gleb Melnikov, Dan Jurgens, Norman Rapperman, and Edward Gilman. And then there's colorist is Alejandro Sanchez and Erwin Gilman. And then the letterer is Arana Maha. And the cover artist is Jamal Campbell. So there's a lot of group of names of people, and again, a slew of variant covers.
Wow.
They're even giving the numbers 1 in 25, 1 in 50. But that's not the splash page, so they didn't break your rule. The first page does have the Daily Planet. And then it opens up to a true splash page. Double page spread. Almost montage.
Mike Grell's Warlord. He was the first one to do that every issue that I know of.
Was he?
Yeah. He used to. The splash page was always sort of a regular page, and then it would be a double page spread.
Oh, okay. And then to stay in the DC universe for a second, we have, and you guys know I love a crossover, Justice League versus Godzilla versus Kong.
Ah, that's out.
Yep.
That
and I'm going to... Huh? This is
Is that
issue
issue
1.
1?
Yes. So this is I would say the generic issue, which is a splash page. It's the $4.99 issue.
Okay.
So there are others that I saw with a higher price point. There are multiple covers. I also got a second one, which is a sketch cover. So I picked that as well. Here's what the blank sketch cover looks like.
Uh-huh.
I have an idea of what to draw on there.
Is that one of those blank sketch covers with a protective cover over the sketch cover?
That's exactly what it is.
It's like, geez.
So it's a very thin paper.
How do you get that slabbed?
I don't know, because you could technically draw on this as well and have a 4 gatefold cover thingy. But I don't know. I don't know if someone would even slab that. Is it complete with this when this is just supposed to be removed, but it's stapled on there? It is part of the printing process.
I assume, Sleepy says, I assume Grail got the double page splash from Kirby's early 70s DC work. Good question. Did that I didn't read a lot of that at the time. I didn't read all of Kirby's early 70s DC work until it was collected like 10 or 15 years ago. So
yeah, I wouldn't even be able to.
I have a vague memory of Commandy being like, but was every issue like Grail did that in every issue. So if, Kirby, he had double page spreads, I know all the time. But Grell always did it on pages 2 and 3. I don't know if Kirby always did it on pages 2 and 3.
Right. I don't know.
I don't know either. Maybe Sleepy knows. Did Kirby always do those on pages 2 and 3?
Have to look it up. So this is what I call the regular safe cover.
Yep.
And then they have the black and white cover.
1.
What was that?
Version 1.
Yes. Doesn't really say on this. Yes, this is cover. No, it just says who it is by, but it
says on the UPC. If the UPC says, what is it, 111? That's first issue, cover 1.
Yes, this is 1111.
Yeah, I think that last one is what covered it. That means first printing, first issue, cover 1.
Okay.
That's what the UPC code means.
All right. And then, I didn't pick up the this one ends with 141.
So is that issue? So maybe 4 is the. So it's issue 1, cover 4, first printing.
And then, as far as I'm aware, they have main cover, variant cover, 1 in 25 variant covers. So I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 variant covers, not including the sound chip cover.
Wow.
That's supposed to have
UPC for each cover.
It's supposed to have a Monster's Roar in that one. Foil variant cover. And the rest of them just say variant covers by various artists. There's a Jim Lee one out there as well. Ben Abernathy is the editor on this. Ben was one of my early editors in manga.
Sleepy says, I believe Kirby almost always did 2 and 3 during that era. Okay. Went back to Marvel. Marvel asked him to stop doing it. They thought he was padding out his issues. So Grail must have got it from Kirby then.
Yeah. And as always, Marvel was not thinking correctly when he was making that kind of design choice, where it's great to open up to a splash page and then open up to a 2-page spread. Some of the high memories.
No way, mister. They were ripping Marvel off. by giving them double-page spreads.
Yep.
Editors are insane, by the way. Let's just point that out.
Completely. And then the last 2 Godzilla projects that I picked up as well, because I only picked up the just the 2 covers for the Godzilla versus Justice League versus Kong. In the regular Godzilla universe in IDW, Godzilla Here Be Dragons issue 3 and issue 4. And I think that might be it for this series, because I think it was
Right.
only a 4-issue series. So I need to put them together and read them all together in one shot. But I don't think I have to worry about which order I read these, because I think they're two different sets of Godzillas at the moment, continuity wise. So, but I'm looking forward to those, just
Very
because
nice.
it is very nice the amount of kaiju related things we're getting nowadays.
Yeah.
Um,
I had a really good week in comics.
yeah,
I
you
must
mentioned
say.
like 20 something issues.
Now I got 11 comics, well, plus that Seth.
Uh-huh.
And I would say out of the 11, 8 or 9 were A's.
Okay.
I mean, you don't always get like I can remember there was like 1 week, I don't know, a month ago, where I had like 6 comics and they were all B's. They were just like here is, let's start with Local Man. There's always a flip book, so on the front we get the old comic book on a table for the cover. In the back we get the old comic book cover with, says Local Girl pasted in. Like this cover doesn't have the girl pasted in it. This cover has this girl pasted in it.
Uh-huh.
Well, but this was a really good issue. This is the one that's about a disgraced superhero who has to move back to his old hometown, and his parents are disappointed in him. The whole town is disappointed in him. His old girlfriend is married to the local sheriff, and to give you a spoiler to how the first trade paperback ended, one of the big heroes he used to work with died when he was in this town, and that was covered up. So like in this issue, some random conspiracy guy comes into the town looking to kill Crossjack was his superhero name, for having killed this big superhero. And what's funny is he's got our hero has to dress in this red ski mask because he's not allowed, because the superhero team owns the copyright and trademark on his superhero outfit, his name, and he's not allowed to fight he's not allowed to fight crime or fight anyone. So he's ended up, and this just kind of starts our second story arc, where we're getting even deeper into some of the stuff that happened in the first story arc, and it's by Tim Seeley is the writer. Tony Fleecs, Fleecs, is the artist. Brad Simpson colors, and doesn't tell who the letterer is, so maybe it's Tony Flex is lettering it. I'm not sure, but only 4 covers with it in this one. But this has just been really good, and this was an especially good issue in that I think they picked up the ball from the first story arc and kept it moving forward at the beginning of this second story arc here, and did a very nice job with it. I gotta say, I really enjoyed this issue. Local Man. So good stuff. Let's see the other good. This was a good issue of Grimm to me too. Grimm has been. It's been an A and B book for me, but this was we got a Rosie the Riveter cover. This issue was an A for me. Once again, it's about Grim Reapers in the afterlife, and something went wrong in the afterlife, and people aren't dying. But meanwhile, our lead character here, whoever this woman is, I can't remember any of their names, found out in like the first story arc that the second story arc, that she's actually the daughter of the Grim Reaper. There's a bunch of Reapers, but she didn't know that. She was the daughter of the Grim Reaper. And then something happened where she kind of inherited his title, but still everything's part of inheriting his title meant someone else went for the title and messed everything up. And now she and one of her friend Grim Reaper are trying to rescue another Grim Reaper from hell. So there's some convoluted theology going on here, or whatever you want to call it. But this was all about them sort of being in hell and trying to navigate hell to find their friend. And it was really well done. Who does it? Stephanie Phillips is our writer. Flaviano is our illustrator. Colored by Rico Renzi. Lettered by Tom Napolitano. Flaviano. I don't know. One-named artist. There's a lot of one-named artists out there. Like Seth. Like Jock. He's another one in there. Two Jocks. Jock, Jok. But this has been like, this series has vacillated between A and B for me. And this week was definitely an A. So that's good. And nobody died in comics this week, right? We didn't see any. Because last week we were talking all about Keith Giffen.
Right.
But everything, no, we get any reports of death. Just want to check on that. That's
so
good.
Far, so good. Yes.
A week without someone dying in comics is pretty good because.
Yes.
A lot of the old timers are getting old.
Mm-hmm.
Any other stories from New York Comic Con for us, Wilson?
I missed the day that apparently somebody could not make it to the bathroom in time.
Oh, so I heard something about someone taking a dump on the floor at Comic Con.
Right. Like, huh? So I only saw a headline.
Yeah, me too. I didn't want to dig deeper into it.
Right. I saw a headline. Apparently, it happened outside one of the autograph areas. I do not, because they do not go into detail where the person just dropped trowel and did it right there, or walked by and dropped
leaking out his leg. We know,
right?
His pants leg. We don't
know. Idea. No idea. It could even be an urban myth. I don't know. I did not meet anyone who saw it themselves. And the few people who reported they saw it decided, I'm taking the high road and I'm not going to take a photo of it. So that made me very cautious whether or not the story was true. But I do not know. But it was information that did reach me when people was like, were you at the con when this happened? It's like, nope, I was not at the con. That happened to be a day I took off because as much fun as the New York Comic Con is, if you're not there to man a booth, there's no real reason to be there. So it's actually kind of fun to just go and hang out. So I didn't like
thing was a service dog.
Was it?
See that's we only read the headline. We don't.
And that's the thing. The headline that I read a headline, and the information that the headline had was that someone took a dump and they're cleaning it up. They blocked the area and they were cleaning it up. That, to me, that makes more sense. That maybe a service dog just happened to do it and people didn't notice it. And because you had so many people walking around, when was it noticed? Was it tracked everywhere? I don't know. That was a lot of information not given to us.
Every week there's got to be some fan of Marvel from the past 15 years of entering comics that ends up feeling dead inside. That's why after 7 years you start finding comics other than Marvel.
Yeah, so I started with Marvel books, and I got them all. So I went over and started getting DC books. I was still getting Marvel books, the DC books, and then over to Dark Horse, and then you dip your toe, and then next thing you know, you're trying stuff from Ultra Force to like 3D comics just to give something another try.
Yeah, there are definitely people. I think that's the nature of corporate-owned superhero comics, because corporate-owned superhero comics convince you that you like the character. When you don't actually like the character, you like what certain creators did with the character.
Yes.
And you may still have some emotional connection with the character, But if you don't like what the creators are doing with the character, you're not going to like the comic. But most people don't realize that because it's in the company's best interest so that you don't realize that. So what always happens is whenever you start buying mainstream superhero comics when you're young, that's when they're all fresh and new. And that's when you say, I like them. I like Spider-Man. And then 10 years later, when a completely different group of people are doing Spider-Man, you might be like, this is just like the story so-and-so did on Spider-Man. I liked that one better. And so you get disillusioned with them. But you're not really getting disillusioned with the character. You're getting disillusioned with the fact that there's so much turnover because corporate character. You're getting disillusioned with the fact that the characters are IP and not their intellectual property, and they got to be coming out, and they got to have some. That's why if you don't start following creators, you're going to be disappointed eventually. And that's what happens to a lot of people.
And then you start noticing things, and maybe it's because I'm an artist and I noticed this quickly, is that there are many covers that do not tell you a single story.
Oh, yeah, that's been going on for a long time now. I saw your post about that.
This is at least something, where it's Kraven the Hunter kind of being hunted by Spider-Man. That's at least intriguing. This is the same image you would put on a lunchbox,
right,
or on a T-shirt. This tells me nothing of the story.
That looks like isn't that Spider Goblin?
This is Spider Goblin.
Okay,
so that makes it a little interesting. But to me, it's like if I was reading the story, maybe that would scream something to me that there is a Spider Goblin.
Comic covers don't serve the purpose they used to.
No, not at all. Where this, I could let it go because it's a first issue. So you're going to have.
It's iconic enough.
Yes. And that's the other thing that I mentioned in my post. Is it a memorable cover? Is it iconic enough that there'll be homage covers to it where you know where it's from?
Nope,
and I don't think there is.
We've discussed that here before. When was the last time that somebody homaged a cover not from what cover has been homaged that came out in the last 10 or 20 years? They just don't. Tit Goblin is selling his collection to a 22 books for 300. You must have had some good books then, because you usually can't get $300 for just 22 books from a comic shop. Yeah, but covers don't serve the same purpose they used to serve. The purpose they used to serve was it was the first image you saw of a book. And if it was intriguing enough, you'd buy that comic. That's what, like I said, to me, comic book covers always, the cultural cachet of comic. I always said there was three things that made a good comic book cover: good design, good drawing, and that it told the story. And that it told the story was the cultural cachet that comic book covers had. Anybody could look at that and be amused by a comic book cover. Other magazine covers didn't tell a story. Regular book covers didn't tell a story. Only comic book covers did. And that's what attracted the sort of casual fan to comic books. But they don't serve that purpose anymore. It's like I would say for most fans, seeing the cover on the stand isn't the first time they've seen that cover. Sort of. In terms of, it's either A, on their pull list, so it doesn't matter what's on the cover, or B, I think there's very few casual fans who go into comic shops and buy comics for their covers. And the ones who do like the pinup covers, I think. It's not the story it's that they would rather collect covers as trading cards.
Yeah.
Unless there's a CGC guy witnessing it, it didn't happen. That should be a thing. Take a dump at a major Comic-Con. They deserve it.
One thing that has happened to me, I try to pay attention to the sides, because if I'm mainly buying as trade paperbacks, I might have to pick up a book from the shelf,
Right.
and they're all lined up together, and I don't see the cover at all.
Yeah, and people who collect collected editions like all the spines to match. That's the one thing they like most.
Yeah.
Want all the spines to match. The cover
but it's
doesn't
not
even matter.
It's not going to happen. And here's something that happens in European comics. You start buying a comic. You started buying a series 20 years ago. 20 years later, you have like 14 albums.
Right.
By the time it gets to the 9th, the publisher decides to redesign the trade dress.
Right. Yep.
The new ones will never have the old one, and
That's
you'll
what
feel
happens.
compelled, and you'll feel the need to buy the old ones again. Or not.
Right as the hobby advances, the collector ends up going from title and character to creator and publisher. Yeah, that's what you have to do. If the only thing you like is Spider-Man, you're eventually going to get sick of Spider-Man, because there's going to be, and that's what happens to everyone. They find there's a long fallow period of Spider-Man where they don't like all the creators, and all of a sudden they find themselves going, "Why am I buying this comic? I don't even like it." And unfortunately, a lot of them stop buying comics altogether at that point, because they were only ever interested in the Spider-Man comic.
Yeah, there's something to be said about being used to going to the comic book shop every week and picking up a set of books. Are you, if you're lucky, you start discovering other books, and you can still pick up Spider-Man. To me, I always said it's like there's been some great runs that I enjoyed, and then there's some runs that it's like, I don't go back to those. And there's this ebb and flow where it's like, oh,
but you're not going to buy the bad runs.
Right.
That's the difference. People who are Spider-Man collectors are going to buy the bad runs until they feel terrible. Wilson showed us comics of Spider-Man. He did.
Yep.
But because you still have some sort of emotional connection to the character of Spider-Man from your youth. When they convinced you it was Spider-Man you liked.
Exactly.
But it really wasn't. It was the artist and writer doing Spider-Man, that what they did with Spider-Man that you liked. And you've come to terms with that. If an artist and writer do something with Spider-Man you don't like, you don't buy it.
Exactly.
I'm selling
and then I'm stuck in that in between of, but do I want to complete the run?
Oh, that's always them.
That's things there. And then now I'm at that point where it's like, no, I don't have to complete the run. Funny enough, I'm enjoying the previous run. I'm reading it for free on the website. And it's like, okay, I'm enjoying that run. That was something I probably would have liked when I read it. And then, as we mentioned, that people read it until they stop or they just stop buying. And one of the things that helped me stop going to the comic book shop every week was that the comic book shop closed down. And when that shop closed down, there are more than other shops I can go to.
But that was your shop.
But that was my shop. That's where I was getting it weekly. And to me, it was like I was able to walk away from it. And when another shop, years later, when another shop I heard was opening up, I did have the itch to go back and maybe start again at that new shop. And I did find out that there's something to be said about opening and closing shops, that there are times where when a shop closed down, people just stop buying books altogether.
Yeah.
They do not switch over to somewhere else. And then when you find out a shop's opening up, people may start out of the blue who never collected comics before. But it just so happened a shop nearby had opened up.
There's
and
a lot to be said for convenience.
Yeah. And I found that fascinating.
And habit.
The only other time that I wanted to go and buy comics again, there was a short rumor for a while that GameStop was going to start carrying comic books. They were going to have a section for comics. And I actually have a local GameStop that's only within a 5-minute walking distance from me. And I asked them, are you guys going to be one of those GameStops? Because I will definitely come once a week here because of the convenience. Because I do have a shop that is a mile and a half away from me that I could walk to, and that has been there since the 80s, and yet I do not go to that shop. And I don't,
Wow.
and it's like the shop was there when I was a kid. I would go there. There was the nearest one I would go to. When I discovered Forbidden Planet when I was in high school, that became my shop because it was always easy to go there after high school. In college, even though knowing that shop was right down the street, in college, my shop became the one that I worked at because I hung out there so much. So that other shop has always been nearby, and I rarely go to it.
Wow. Yeah, I don't know where I'd get my comics if my comic shop closed down, which it very well might someday because it's only open because Roy, he almost runs it as a hobby. He's got a full-time job that he telecommutes to, so he does it from the shop. But if he didn't want to have the shop open, because he's also he's got tons and tons and tons of comics at home too.
Right.
So he runs it so he can get his own stuff. But if
Right.
he like retires someday, I'm not. I think like the original Wizard shop is still open somewhere in the county. But I don't know. They might be the only two comic shops in my whole county, which isn't a very big county, but still.
Right.
So I'd probably have to get the mail order, which would be, I like going to the comic shop and seeing the comics and chatting with Roy and John and my friend Rob. So I'd be like, whoa.
Who knows? It might be one of those things that who closed the shop, but you guys will still meet up at his place weekly, have a lunch or something, and do it that way.
Yeah, it's weird though, but it's like, let's see. Selling to one of my local comic shops. They serve their purpose to die.
Well, yeah, I mean, when they started doing the incentive that you have to buy 500 copies of the comic to get that one special cover, because one of your trading card collectors wants it.
Oh yeah, that maybe Tit Goblin's Canadian, so maybe the exchange rate on those. Yeah, there's a couple of people at the Roy shop who all of a sudden there'll be 50 copies of some random comic on the shelf because somebody wanted the 1 in 50. But they don't want the other. Roy's always like, hey, if you want the other 50 copies, you can have them. Because the 1 in 50 is going to cost them $100, $200, whatever it is.
Right.
And Roy's like, I'm perfectly willing to give you the other 50 too. They're like, no, thanks. Because Roy can't sell the other 50.
Yeah, I don't like that concept and idea that I cannot see how comic shops do it. Bless them that they are, because they're trying to fulfill those orders, but at the same time, I don't see it that way. But I can't think like an evil corporation does.
Yeah.
So I kind of want people to buy my comics. I don't want them to be forced to buy 50 books or more just to have that one image that you could get from a JPEG. But
I just don't understand variant cover collecting. I understand it.
I understand it to a degree. I like the idea sometimes picking one or two covers. I don't like the idea of forcing a store to have to buy 50 of them to get one.
Yeah, that's nutty. Oh, I understand that. It gets them to buy 50. But but what I've noticed about variant cover collectors, at least through watching YouTube videos, is that they don't last long. I think variant cover collecting wears people out in terms of first of all, I understand that collector's urge to have every one. It's like, oh, I need, like you even said before, you want to fill in the issues you missed, even though you don't like them. They were the bad issues of Spider-Man. You don't really want them, but sometimes like, should I get them just to fill in the missing numbers? Because that's just sort of the collector's urge.
Right.
And I think that's there with comic books too, with variant covers, in that, I want all 8 covers of this new #1 that I'm excited about. I think it's sort of that urge, but I think it also wears down variant cover collectors because like the variant cover collectors I've seen on YouTube all come and go pretty quickly. They're like fireflies. Some of them stick around, and because usually if you're a variant cover collector, except for like the guy at my local comic shop who buys one of everything and sticks them in a warehouse, you're usually a new collector and you're excited about you're new to comics, you're excited about comics. Ooh, you see you can complete a collection of variant covers. That's kind of fun. But once they start getting up to 15, 20, 50 variant covers, that just breaks them. That's just like, I can't do this anymore. And I think they just leave. They're just done with comics. But there's usually new variant cover collectors to step up and take their, newbies to take their place. So I think that there's sort of a cycle happening with the variant cover collectors where it wears them out faster than a collector who likes the stories.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I once saw a guy claiming that 85% of the market was collectors and 15% readers. If that's true, the market's even more troubled than anyone realized.
Yeah, I don't think that's true at all. But once again, it's those the variant cover collectors are like what is that called? Special forces, force multipliers. So that when I go in to buy the latest Spider-Man, I buy one as a reader. I buy one issue. When a variant cover collector goes in, he goes in and buys 3 issues. So he's worth 3 of what I'm worth to Marvel or DC. But he's gone in a year. They got to get another variant collector in there who seemed. So I think that they variant, and but it counts. Like he counts 3 times what I count. So I guess that's where the number comes from when you said 80% are variant cover collectors. I think it's not that 80% of fans are variant cover collectors, is that 80% of comics are sold to variant cover collectors. Because I'm only buying 1 copy of it. Wilson bought 2 copies of it. There's people buying 5 or 6 copies of it. But I think their numbers are small, but they're multiplied because they're buying 6 copies of it.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it is. They're a force multiplier. I mean, that's why they do it.
Yeah, and the other force multiplier is that the store had to order 50 copies of that book to get that one. So the store bought the 50 copies. So
yeah,
Marvel sold out of those books, but didn't sell through.
They never get in the hands of readers ever.
Right, exactly.
Mm-hmm. They either go into dollar bins, which there are some people I know who just buy from the dollar bins on YouTube. But what my comic shop did, since they don't have dollar bins and they don't want to, it's bad for them to put all these comics they're selling to me for $4 in a $1 bin.
Mm-hmm.
That just makes me resent it. So they sell them in bulk to like those people who repackage them. Mystery box of comics, $20 for 40 comics. They sell them to those guys.
Right.
I felt that with Wonder Woman. Every time I give up, they do a reboot. Oh, that's the changing character. Yeah, trying not to buy the Tom King run. He almost got me with the final pages of issue 800. Yeah. Sometimes it's those final pages where something exciting happens that you're like, oh, I got to get the next issue. And then nothing exciting happens until the final pages. Valiant licensed out their publishing to Alien books. Yeah, I just noticed that.
Yeah, the Alien books took over the Valiant stuff. Kept the editorial team, and I talked to Lisa this week during Comic-Con, and she's very happy with Alien books and the direction they're going.
That's good.
The fact that that Valiant was at a comic book show for the first time in a couple of years makes it
because
a
a
positive thing as
Chinese
well.
company who wanted to make movies was in charge of Valiant. I don't think they were that interested in comics anymore.
No. So what I hear is Valiant will probably be making an easier comeback compared to the company that was running it before.
At my local shop, ratios and variants are hot. Yep. When Wolverine, Punisher, and a recent Transformer dropped, not only did the comics sell out, but the variants and ratios too. Good evening, Gore. Yeah. When it's a hot book, it's always good to sell out.
Yeah, it's always great to sell out because when you hear about a hot book and you get to the comic shop and there are tons of issues there, it's like, oh, okay.
What former Marvel needs to do at this point is start a deal like Marvel Knight and have them license out shit. Marvel already does license stuff out. There's other companies doing Marvel stuff, mostly kid stuff, but not always. Some crossovers and things.
I don't think they currently have the kids line. It was done at IDW, but IDW is this close to closing up shop. But yeah, I would. The thing is, I wouldn't even do just licensing a particular group of characters as a special event. I would just shut everything down and license that thing to somewhere in South America.
Ratios. If the big two are not so constrained with their brand identity, then people will not think to pay a premium for Monaco and shit. Yeah. People also, there is part of it is you have to give collectors something to collect. That's what it is. It is too easy to collect comics. As a comics reader, I have it easy. All I got to do is tell my local shop that I want Grimm every month, and they order it and put it aside for me. That doesn't appeal to collectors.
Right.
Collectors want something exclusive. They want something that not everybody can have. They want something that's harder to get. That's just human nature.
Thrill of the hunt.
Yeah,
right.
Some of my friends here in Portugal just found out about foreign edition collectors, and they were laughing at it.
That's your regular stuff.
Now, who the hell wants to buy a comic that you can't read?
Because you can't get it. That's why.
And that's even slapped.
It's the novelty of it. I have Spider-Man comics in French, in German, just because of the novelty of having it that way.
But do you feel the need to spend $600 on a Serbian copy just to have it?
No, I don't spend more than $20 on any of the books.
He picks them up for free at Marvel. Don't let him kid you.
But there are people spending stupid amounts of money on keys, just because they want to have. I have the Amazing Spider-Man number 300 from 22 different countries.
It's all about the collected. It's about nobody else has that. They're collecting it. It's hard to do. That's all it is.
And I get that. And the German editions of Spider-Man I have are like the very first 20 issues of Spider-Man. And because it is the first printing in German, you could ask for a higher price. So I can see the mentality working in there. I got them all pretty easily because I bought them in a bundle from eBay. But now people are breaking up those bundles and selling them individually. They're getting them slabbed and stuff like that because it is a first printing of Spider-Man #1 in this country. I get it. I see it. I understand that hustle. I understand that game. But I am the guy who saw it. It's like, oh, this is unique. I'm buying it for $20 and then I'm walking away. I'm not the guy going, oh yeah, I only have these issues. You can have one, but it's going to cost you an arm and a leg. I'm not going to be the guy that buys it from him. I'm going to be the guy selling it to the guy. So
but the people who started promoting this collecting foreign editions, they even came up with their own language for it, just is to entice, because first they had to convince collectors that these are not reprints.
Right.
Right. That's what CGC is there for. And I'm sure, I'm guessing, conspiracy theory, but every time something becomes the new hot collectible, it's already been slabbed and ready for sale.
Mm-hmm.
That a lot of that happened recently last year or two. I've noticed that the Impel cards that Marvel did back in the 90s, we all have boxes full of them. Now all of a sudden, these 10 point whatever are coming
Gem
out.
Mint 10.
Gem Mint 10s of the first Spider-Man card, and it's like, wow. But notice, they're asking that kind of money. No one's getting that kind of money.
Not
And
anymore.
all of a sudden, people are scrambling. I'm now seeing Facebook groups pop up going, how much do you think these cards are worth? They're not worth, they stood in your closet for years. They're not worth anything. But someone created a new language for them. Hologram cards are the next big thing. Mark my word.
And Sequential Geek, if the direct market dies, we won't have any place to get our comic books.
They should have thought of that before they went full on with the direct market.
Well, that was all that was left, the direct market. Does make one wonder if the variant cover thing is wiggling away the pool of potential readers before they become hooked on reading comics. Yeah, I think it is, but I don't know if they'd get hooked on reading comics anyway. They liked collecting comics. That's what appeals to some people about comics, is the collectible nature of them.
Right. Even the way publishers do market their releases, it does not entice people to become readers.
Yeah. Variants are cool, but when you do nothing, absolutely zero for expanding the demographic, expanding the I've been listening to that expanding the demographic stuff for
the demographic's gone somewhere else. It's mostly manga.
You got to make good comics, and then maybe people will expanding the demographic for comics has never, ever, ever worked. It's just something people talk about.
Yeah, because if they wanted to, there would be ways. There were many times when I was at Marvel where I would walk into the marketing guy's office and go, "Why don't we do this? Why not do that?" And it's like, that spends money. We can't do that. People won't want that. And it's like, oh, you're just telling me you're telling me that they don't want to spend that kind of money, because a lot of stuff that are now done, collected editions and stuff like that, those were suggested years ago.
Oh yeah.
But Marvel didn't want to do it, and I realized Marvel didn't want to do the work. So that's why you have those giant collected editions being done by other companies, because they're doing the actual work.
Yep. They're the Marvel, like in the 90s, and there may be some truth to this, didn't want to do collected editions because they thought it would whittle away their monthly readers, which I think it did, but there's still people buying collected editions, so maybe it evens out.
Yeah, but the thing is,
Spawn to 10 was in the lot I sold. Oh. By the way, did you see they're coming out with 10 new Spawn titles in 2024? I don't know. I guess the other ones are selling well. There's going to be a whole... I was trying to figure out, because I was looking at the titles. I'm like, is that 10 new titles? Or are they going up to 10? Because I think there's 4 now. But I think there's 10 new titles of Spawn.
Even so...
He can't raise the prices, so he's going to raise how many issues he makes. But he's going to. Well, I don't know if he's going to
at all. Everything, all of it. They should let it go. Marvel is done. License all. Yeah, Disney might someday.
License to me. I have $5 here.
Yeah.
I will hire the Uruguayan artists and pay them $1 a page, and they will produce fun comics.
If there's anything I have less interest in than Marvel and DC Comics, is Marvel and DC Comics licensed out to third parties.
But it depends on the third party. Why do you?
You're right. It does depend on the third party, but most of them are licensed out to a third party looking to make a buck, so they pay the creators even less than Marvel and DC. That's how it works.
Unfortunately, so
that's why the publisher that's why the person doing the packaging needs to be in Europe, because we respect the art form. Just look at what they do with Disney in Italy, or with the Phantom in Sweden.
Well, no, we can't, because you won't let us buy
right.
any of those. There's a foreign book, so we can't compare it. So you can't have it both ways. You can't have it both ways.
Well, but the production costs for the Phantom are already paid for in Sweden. You just need somebody in the USA to put those out. The Disney comics, there was an attempt at trying to sell a few of those. I don't think it worked, but then again, it's the problem of trying to sell Disney comics in the direct market when that's not their potential primary audience.
Costa, most likely they will license to India, since it's the largest growing market with the largest population. They already have. I know Marvel has Indian licenses, Indian comics made in India.
They do a lot of stuff in India.
They even printed some of them over here about 20 years ago or so. Sold to Wilson for $40. I've got some foreign editions for you, Wilson.
Yeah.
Maybe, no, I don't spend more than 20. Sorry, Mind the Comics.
Plus shipping.
Don't forget. I am a comic artist, so I'm not making that kind of money.
It's true. At my shop, there's a guy who buys foreign editions of any Marvel and DC book.
Yeah, but that's what they pay. Okay, they ask this comic's $120 plus $40 shipping. And somebody, so no, stop! Do not spend $160 on a German language edition of Spider-Man. Stop.
Sequential Geek is much less angry at comics he can't read. Foreign editions are fun. They're cool. I love them.
The thing is, the local comics fans, they kind of started noticing that some comics are disappearing. The French Canadians are very wary of selling anything to the United States. Because because most of these buyers are looking for keys. They take out specific issues. So you're trying to build a run of a certain comic, and those because the other ones are $2, but that one's all of a sudden is $120. The Italians were completely pissed. I remember the guys from the foreign comics group talking about the Italians were really pissed, and instead of understanding why the Italians were pissed, you have to explain to them that that's the market price now. No, they don't care. They want to read the comic because it's in their language.
Right. Sleepy says, I confess, owning original art does have the collecting bonus of being one of a kind. It sure does. It sure does. That's one of the good. You're the only one who can hold it and contemplate it. I own a piece of Seth original art. Original art. The smart people buy original art, while the suckers buy comics. Yeah. Expanding the demographic has never ever worked. Does not mean it's not possible. Yeah, you try that, okay?
Yeah, it doesn't work if you try.
Tilting at that windmill.
It only works 1% of the time without planning. If you plan it, it never works.
I'm not saying don't try. I'm just saying it's not. If that's your plan, if you're putting your eggs in that basket, I want to sell comic books to people who don't buy comic books, you're in trouble.
Yeah, one of the things is whenever you try to create a new product line of comics, what everyone does the same thing. Let's put out 4 to 6 titles, and in 1 year, let's double the output. And then people stop buying.
I see Costa. There we go.
Did you say something?
The mighty mosquito of Madagascar.
The Phantom, Phantom's made in Sweden.
Wasn't
it's called
Spawn? Oh yes, we weren't fooled by Spawn's countdown. We knew they were going to get rid of that. For those of you who didn't read Spawn at the beginning, the gimmick to the original Spawn was all the Spawns had a countdown, and as they used their power, the countdown got closer to 0. And when it finally got to 0, that Spawn would die. First time I read that, I'm like, they're going to get rid of this clock. They're not going to kill their character.
They got me. I thought that was what he was going to
They
do.
already have. Yeah,
I,
not from India yet.
I was like, oh wow, that's interesting. Are
Oh,
they
you were
going to really
totally,
kill that?
you were totally
Oh,
buying it.
I totally bought it. I completely bought it. I was there at the comic book shop going, wow, that's amazing. These guys
I,
up and left Marvel, and it's like, wow. And
I
they're
can't
saying
believe
all
it.
these things. Oh, I completely believed it. Hook, line, and sinker. I was watching that countdown, and then it was like, then it was gone. It's like, well, wow. And by then it was too late. They got me.
Countdown. The artwork in many foreign editions, the different formats, it's different.
It is,
cool, dog.
And that's how you get an Aquaman cover with a dolphin instead of Mera.
There you go. There you go.
So,
Let's see, another comic book I got this week. And here's another reason I love Time Before Time, issue number 29. Really, really good. I thought this was going to 30, but I think it's only going to 29 because it says next issue to be concluded, unless they have an epilogue issue. It's only going to 29, but this, I was just calling this the best series nobody's buying. You can get it all in trade these days. And I wonder how, like, I buy comics month to month. I really enjoy that. And one of the things I enjoy is the serial nature of comic books. Like, I've been reading about these characters and following them for 29 issues, which is probably around 3 years in Image Comics time. So it's like I've been living with these characters for 3 years. So they're doing a really good job with the ending, and it's kind of really emotional too. And next issue is the conclusion. I'm looking forward to the conclusion in the next issue and see what's going to happen. And what a different experience it would be reading all 29 issues in an afternoon. I mean, that would just be, because I have a different connection to this book because I've been reading it issue to issue for 3 years. If I'm not saying it would be bad to read it all in an afternoon, it would just be different. So it's like, that's one of the reasons I like buying comics month to month is there's only one chance to get that experience. To get that experience of living with a comic for 3 years until you get to the emotional end of it. I just like it. I really enjoy that, and I'll read it again, like all 29 issues at once, and it'll be a completely different thing. But I was just contemplating that as after I finished reading this issue. I'm like, wow, that was really good. That was really emotional. I wonder how much of the emotion I had for this had to do with me reading it month to month. You might read this all in an afternoon and go, oh, that was pretty good, but it wasn't emotional to me.
Right.
So that I find that another thing interesting to contemplate that maybe Seth will make a comic about. That only I will get. But that one's been good. Let's see if we get a sell comics to people who don't buy comics. What do you think this fake country is for? You don't know what they want, huh? They didn't ask for a Guardians of the Galaxy flick or an Alias comic. No, but they asked for a superhero action movie. Sure, they sure did, and that's what they gave them.
I knew 2 years before the movie came out that Guardians of the Galaxy was going to be a hit because it had a talking raccoon with a big machine gun. That was obvious.
They weren't taking chances. They weren't doing Palookaville.
No, they were doing.
They were looking through their list of books. It's like, how about this one with the talking tree? I don't know. It has a raccoon with a machine gun. Sold. I see plushies.
I do admit that I was surprised at how popular Baby Groot became.
Yeah. Paolo, I had to drop off some art in a town close by, Portugal Cove. I made sure to walk through the fishery graveyard and say hi to all your ancestors' ghosts trapped on my island.
Yeah, whenever the Portuguese national soccer team plays, drop by the island. The ghosts will buy you a beer.
Yes, I enjoyed the same thing while reading 100 Bullets. Sometimes it was not monthly, not that emotional book though, but nice. Yeah, I didn't like 100 Bullets only because who's the writer again? Edward Rizzo is the artist, right?
Brian Azzarello.
I'm just not that big a Brian Azzarello fan, is all it is. But Edward Rizzo artwork was terrific. Here's one of the not A-level books.
Eduardo Rizzo is one of those guys getting paid $1 a page in a foreign country.
That's the key. Fear the Funhouse, Toy Box of Terror. This is Archie in one of the Archie horror comics, which I've been enjoying almost all of. This was one I didn't enjoy that much. It was one of the most confusing. There is like 40 pages of plot in this 20-page story. It was just like, I couldn't even tell you what happened. There was a robot girl. There was some guy who was really a doll. There was a doll who there were so many plot points, because most of these are fairly straightforward. There were so many plot points in this, I couldn't keep them straight, and so much type. And at one point, it was like, we want to cram everything in these 20 pages. Did you know that Archie had their own Dr. Doom? Let's see, where did he show up? And the stories end and then continue. It was like, what?
Archie had their own spy network, very similar to S.H.I.E.L.D.
Mad Dr. Doom. And it says, first appearance, Little Archie 24, 1962. I guess they want you to know that they didn't rip off Marvel with that name.
With 1962. Came out right around the same time. Fantastic Four #5 was, what, July 62?
But you also have to remember that there's a
Cobra Kai action figures.
Ooh.
there's a portion of Archie that I've noticed over the years that is very cult-like in the stuff that they're responsible for creating, to the point where it's they believe Stan stole every idea he had from Archie's books, and even to the point that Captain America is the S.H.I.E.L.D. character stolen, and that Stan had to do with it. And it's like, but Stan didn't create Captain America. But from some of these Archie cultists, everything Stan created at Marvel came from Archie. Spider-Man's The Fly. We do know that.
Yeah, but
we do know that now that Stan co-created these, but he had co-creators. They were people there who actually came in with these ideas. But you can find an Archie equivalent somewhere, or these Archie guys can find the equivalent. And I've seen some of these conversations up close where it's like, no, here's what he stole from here and from there. And it's fascinating to watch that kind of a thing where it's like, and I also am a big component of the idea that, yeah, more than one person can think of the same similar idea. The name Dr. Doom, it's easy enough to come up with.
Yeah, that's an easy one.
That's kind of an easy one. And then you can start going, okay, let's go back in comics and see that, yes, Steve Ditko drew Aunt May and Uncle Ben once before for something else.
They were his generic old man and old woman.
Generic old man, generic old woman. And it's like, it's fascinating to see where you will have people who are saying, well, this had to be this. It brings me all back to when, and this is great because of YouTube, how Spider-Man was originally a costume that had to be done by Ben Cooper, and oh my God, Marvel must owe Ben Cooper millions of dollars
Who would
because
have ever thought of spider webs in a spider design?
right, when everything was something man at that time, you're making costumes, you're making generic, but to go as far as to say, that building or the warehouse was right down the street from somebody. They had to be influenced by it. And it's like they may have even worked in that factory. It's like there is nothing that stated Steve Ditko worked in that factory because the factory was down the street from where the Marvel offices were. Such
I,
such a
I never once went into a factory for any area, any radius around Marvel.
yeah, and for them to go that, here's the proof, and all they got is that there's webs and a costume called Spider-Man. And
Yeah.
it's like, no, that's
Like,
just that's not how intellectual property works in general.
Well, the way the webs are
there is 4
designed.
pages of plot in that title.
The what? What was that?
He said there's 4 pages of plot in this title alone. I said, I got to agree with him there.
No, but the way the webs are designed in the mask around the eyes, that's what's similar in terms of design.
It wasn't that similar. The design was not similar at all.
And it almost comes down to when Ghostbusters came out, the movie's coming out, the people that own Casper went after them, saying that the ghosts looked too much like one of the Threos, the terrible Threos. And the court case went all the way up to the fact it's like there's only so many ways you could draw a ghost. So, again, I understand intellectual rights and properties, and they got to hold on to their properties. But at the same time, is to come up with these theories that's like insane.
Right. Oh, and it turns out this is the last issue of the Savage Strength of Starstorm.
Does it answer the questions? Does it not? It doesn't answer. Doesn't answer any of the questions that you had. Is it packaged like that on purpose or not?
Because I don't. He introduces even more characters. It's crazy. He just keeps introducing more and more characters into this galactic story, and then it says,
I think we already.
So ends the first chapter of the saga of Starstorm. Starstorm will return in the Galactic Warriors saga. Stay tuned. So we get a black and white. You have to look at the. I mean, this has to be amateur. I mean,
I think it's a variant clone of Eric Larson.
Didn't we come up with the conclusion that that thing is a parody? The last time we talked about it?
I don't know.
I mean, look at that.
These are the androids they have to fight.
That thing looks like everything about this looks like an Extreme comic. I mean, look at this. They're all copies of any.
It's I am enjoying it so. And look, this is the weirdest monster ever. It's just like you ran out of designs and you just came up with a plastic bag with teeth and horns.
Very classic Doctor Who. I don't know. I think the book is on a level of genius that either we're not getting it or maybe we are.
Yeah, it's like trying to read Seth. It's Seth and Starstorm.
But I really enjoyed this issue. It was I'm enjoying this book so much. It is so just unpretentious. I thought this up in high school and I finally get a chance to make it comic, and it's just a lot of fun. And the plot is simple. There's bad guys from outer space. They're looking for Starstorm. They want his magic power, and they're destroying Earth to get it. And all the superheroes from Earth have to bond together to try to stop them, but they can't. So they need Starstorm, but then Starstorm leaves for some reason, and he comes back, and it's like, it's just kind of seat of your pants. But really enjoyed it. I'm going to have to put whatever the name of the next one is going on my pull list if it ever comes out, because you never know. Who knows how many copies of that they actually sold.
I'm curious if he just had that done, had the artwork sitting there for years and decided, I'm going to publish this and publish it. And maybe that's the only reason why that 2-page spread didn't line up correctly, because he kind of forgot to line it up. I don't know. It's just
because he's Wes Craig's brother too, allegedly, unless that's a parody too. I don't know.
I don't know. Again, there might be a flat file full of all of this artwork that he's been doing and decided to print it now. It's just amazing.
No one has ever seen Steve Ditko and Ben Cooper in the same room ever. Well, Steve Ditko is Ben Cooper. You don't get it. That's the twist.
That would have been an amazing twist. I watched that Steve Ditko thing that popped up this week.
And I haven't seen that.
About his brother and his nephew talking about Steve Ditko.
Yeah, Alex Grand, from the Comic Book Historians, interviewed Ditko's brother and nephew.
And so there's photos never seen before, some video, very fascinating to watch. And it's like, okay, that's an interesting look into the life of a person we just never really got to see all that much. The few times that I spoke to him, was work related. So there was never like, so what are you doing this weekend, Steve, or anything like that. So it was fascinating to at least peek into someone that we've never known anything about. So that was quite entertaining.
I did see Steve Ditko sign an autograph once.
Did you? Well,
yeah.
I've seen him. My very first meeting with Steve Ditko, I was an intern, and I heard he was in the building. And I knew nothing else about Steve Ditko other than he was the creator of Spider-Man. And being a Spider-Man fan, I walked up with a Marvel Masterwork and said, "Could you sign this?" And he's like, "I don't do that." And I was like, "Okay." And I walked away. And it was like, that was it.
It was probably 1990. It was before I even knew anything about Steve Ditko not wanting to sign stuff or whatever. I hadn't even read that yet. But at one point, it was Steve Bunch, who collects autographs and stuff. And I used to sit right next to Jack Abel at this time. So Steve Ditko stopped by to talk to Jack.
Right.
And Steve Bunch handed him a blank piece of paper. I believe it was one of those Marvel scrap Bristols, because that's what Bunch collected autographs on sometimes. I asked him to sign it. And Steve kind of looked over at Jack, and Jack gave him the high sign. So Steve Ditko signed it and gave it back to him. I don't even know if Bunch noticed that Jack went and gave him the high sign. So that's why Steve Ditko signed. Maybe also because it was just a piece of paper.
Right. I've seen his signature on a comic book, 1994. I was with Stan, and this guy comes up with a Spider-Man book and opens it up, and Steve's autograph on it. And Stan's like, "How did you get that autograph?" And the kid was like, I think he said he might have been related to Steve, or that he was a neighbor to someone related to Steve, and that's how he was able to get the autograph. And Stan smiled, and he was like, "That's cool." And he signs it right next to him, and it was like, and that was the first time I ever seen Steve Ditko's autograph. But again, not really by the time I was sitting with Stan, I did find out more about Steve and not signing. I eventually have something signed by Steve because he would sign his artwork release forms and mail them back. So I have like my correspondent letter from him, because I had found something that I questioned whether or not it was his. And then he was like, "Would you mind holding on to it until I come into the office? I'll take a look at it and I'll see if that is me." And he signed it with an S, but he signed the actual envelope. So I have that as like a signed item from didn't go. So that's how I got it. And I know that somebody. Okay, so back in the day at Marvel, you would come in, you would visit, you would sign on the desk.
Oh yeah,
You would sign in.
you'd sign in. They'd have an
Right.
actual sign-in book that you had to sign your name in if you were a freelancer or somebody coming in for the day.
So I know that there was a freelancer who saw the signature and he cut the signature out of the what you call it book, the sign-in book, and walked away with it because nobody was manning the
Yeah.
table at the time.
Yep. Has anyone ever read anything by Josh Bayer? The 10th Tomorrow Forever. I don't know Josh Bayer.
The
I've just
name
seen
sounds
stuff.
familiar, but I don't recall. It.
I do not recall that. And let's see, Tim, your jacket behind you is coming along cool. Yeah, I've actually finished this part. The cape is done. So we've got the eyes will be looking at you like that. And then we've got the back here. So this part is done, and I just finished. Hold on, let me see if I can get this for you. Whoops. I finished this part here. This is the bottom of the coat. I did a Jackson Pollock drip painting for it.
Nice.
So that goes all along. That goes all along the bottom 6 inches. And I really underestimated how much time it would take for that part to dry. Because Jackson Pollock, if you've never seen that famous movie with him where they show him painting, it was called drip painting because he had a stick or something. He would dip into the paint, and then it would run off the stick as he moved it around, and that's how he'd control the paint. And he'd fling it around sometimes or do whatever. So that's what I figured I was going to do. But I had this paint, which is in sort of this squeeze bottle. So I was like, I'm not sure if it's the right viscosity to drip. And it wasn't.
No?
So it was just a little too thick. So I had to kind of squeeze it out and fling it around. But of course, every time I squeezed it out, like a blob of paint would come out. And it's water-based paint that, like the rest of this stuff over here I was painting with. Now, if I'm painting with that with a brush, it takes the fabric paint about half an hour to dry. With those big blobs of paint, it took 2 days for it to dry. So, like, I've got it sitting here. I'm like, is it dry yet? Is it dry yet? Is it dry yet? Nope. So, I figured it would dry in an afternoon, maybe overnight. 2 days. The paint was that thick. Now, here's a second issue I picked up this week that was really good. All-Star Statics. And I think the name of the book is Statics. I thought Fantagraphics was putting it out, but there's no, I don't see there's no like publisher logo anywhere. And it's only got his Write Him in Cooper Station, New York. And there's no indicia but Statics #2, written and drawn by Jeffrey Lewis, copyright 2023. First printing September 2023, 4,000 copies, printed in Texas. I guess Brenner Printing printed this one.
I thought All-Star
was black
was
and
like
white
a DC thing.
It's, I guess you'd call it, it's an autobiographical comic. I guess those are back, but here's an interesting little. There's a few stories in it. Here's Here's the "What's Great About Me" story where he says, maybe for an experiment, I should stop trying to focus on the negative. Why should an autobiographical comic have to be self-lacerating or confessional or anxiety-ridden? What if I just made something that's like, "What's great about me? You can't even touch me with a 10-foot pole. Are you kidding? You don't even know how great my greatness is." So that story, he spends about 3 or 4 pages telling you how great he is. But then
And
the
what
main
issue of
story,
Cerebus is that?
the main story is my dad's boat story as told by my mom. So his mother is telling him a story of her and his father's youth before he was born, where they decided to quit their jobs and go on a boat trip to the Amazon. And the story itself is just nuts because they decided to go on this boat trip to the Amazon with the mother, the father, a couple of their friends, and a pet monkey. And it's just like, what? A pet monkey?
What
Uh,
year is this story taking place?
uh, the early 90s? Did they give us a year? See, I keep thinking it's going to be taking place in 1950, but then I realize, the early 90s was a long time ago, and I think that's when I think they mentioned that in here somewhere. I don't know. And then they meet these two con artists who on a boat who say, "Let's not go to the Amazon. We'll take you to Tahiti." Then the mother says, "I ain't going to Tahiti." And she stays in Mexico or wherever they were. Father's like, "Oh, I'm going to Tahiti." So he went to Tahiti with these two con artists, ended up in a hurricane. Da, da, da. It's just like, what? People did this?
And
And then,
the thing is, it's like I can believe it because I have a story with a pet monkey that I never really talk about because it wasn't my pet monkey, mind you. It was just that because this is such an early memory, and I have yet to speak to my aunt about this. So, this it's the 70s, and this is back when my mother, my aunt, and my grandmother all lived in the same building, not in the same apartments, but in the same apartment complex. My grandmother, I
oh,
think
pardon me,
we
it was
lived on.
1967.
Okay. I could believe that because in 1970s, you could buy pet monkeys out of a comic book and
Yeah.
out of magazines. They would be, I believe, Chupukin monkeys were the types that they were selling, and so it wasn't uncommon to see an animal in my building. I remember my grandmother would have live chickens in the building. I didn't know what they were going to be used for. It's like, oh, chickens in the building. Never occurred to me that there was always a different chicken. She just was the type that would kill the chicken herself and prepare it. I didn't visit her daily, but I knew that occasionally she had a chicken in the apartment. And again, it was one of those things where I was visiting my aunt, and she had a bunch of friends over, and someone brought a monkey with them. And it was a pet monkey because it had a diaper.
Uh-huh.
But I never seen an animal like that before. I've seen dogs, I've seen cats, I've seen chickens.
I've
I
never
even
seen a
seen
monkey.
I've never seen a monkey, let alone something that's almost the same size as I was because I was like I was definitely out of diapers.
Right.
But, this is before school, so I wasn't even in kindergarten. So it was that in between where it's like I might have just received sentience because it
Uh-huh.
is a memory, but and I was talking because I
Right.
clearly was screaming and calling for my mother. And back then, when I was a kid, any female parent figure was mom. So it wasn't
Right.
even it wasn't that I was calling for my grandmother or my aunt. I would just be saying "mommy, mommy" for any female figure at the time, and it's just like one of those things that they had to, remove the monkey because I was freaking out, and all I remember of it was red eyes, and that was kind of it. And again, seeing something like that, so I can believe there are stories about our family and the pet monkey.
And monkeys are wild animals.
Completely wild animals, but in the 70s, there were a few in the Bronx.
How did I water? I didn't actually water down my fabric. I didn't have to, but you just add water and stir. That wouldn't be hard to water down my fabric paint. But it was actually thin enough to paint with. Just to drip, I couldn't. I had to squirt rather than drip. Not a coincidence. Galactic positioned right above the dome. Nope. Over your head. Will you do a walking through New York City video while wearing that jacket? Please, I will have to. I'll promise you I'll do one. No one talks about their pet monkey story. That's how AIDS got started. One of my old coworkers had a pet monkey in the early 70s, bought it at a local department. Damn the 70s. They were singing
That was a wild time.
Close to seeing a monkey for me. Let's see. I also got In Hell We Fight. Issue number 5, the continuing our adventure in hell. Once again, this is a good one. Another A this week. Enjoyed this thoroughly with we had one of the characters' father, who's a great dragon of hell, and it was just good stuff. I got it. Let me move this along quickly.
What's the first rule of Hell Fight Club?
Don't write comics about Hell Fight Club. And I'm really enjoying this series. Jay Stevens made it look like it was a damaged comic, of course, because that's what comics do. So it's Dwellings, and what is this? It's supposed to look like a Dell comic, maybe, or a Gold Key?
Harvey.
That one.
That looks like the design for Harvey.
And the insides too, but it's Harvey. Adult horror stories. I think this was like 70 pages too. I think it was like 72 pages for $10. They've even got fake ads in the comic and on the back of the comic. I haven't really given the fake ads that much of a go over. Oh, there we go. Fake ads for T-shirts of the characters. But this Jay Stevens is really good. I mean, Harvey Comics horror stories, I bet you could call like the first horror stuff. I mean, and there's lots of violence in them. There's lots of blood and violence. So it's fun stuff, and just so well drawn. Well drawn. The storytelling in them is real good. Coloring is nice. It's just a top shelf product. If you like horror stories that look like old Harvey comics, this is the comic for you. But I really enjoyed reading this one. I think it's a 4-issue mini. 10, like I said, $10 an issue, but at 72 pages, that's 6.5 Marvel comics. 3.5 Marvel comics. So a good bang for your buck.
Did you mention if it's a continuous story or there's chapters in them?
Each there was themes that continued throughout it, but each one was its own story. But there were, 72 pages. They were long stories.
Yeah. Okay.
Story about a haunted house. Story about a girl who can't find her grandmother. Thinks the old folks' home is hiding her grandmother. Couple of old time, and like sometimes within stories, they tell you stories. So like in the middle of story number 1, all of a sudden the character goes, "Let me tell you a ghost story," and tells a ghost story that then relates back to the story you're reading. So it's hard to tell how many stories, or how do you count how many stories were in it?
Right.
Jay Stevens' Instagram has a couple of covers where he's doing easy horror.
Oh.
Familiar, endearingly creepy tales of terror, familiar horror from within dwellings.
He must have his own alternate covers.
Yeah.
Latest issue of Rogue Sun. Once again, the issues of Rogue Sun have been B's for me lately. This was an A issue. They just, because The storyline in this one has been the Sunstone, which gives him that power. He found out there's other old rogue sons, at least part of them still alive in the Sunstone. And one of those guys took over his body. So for the last, 4 or 5 issues, he's been trying to get his body back from this, rogue son. And he's teaming up with like his father and his grandfather, who he doesn't get along with, in the Sunstone to try and figure out how to get his body back. And to me, it's kind of like, Captain America quits being Captain America again. And you're just kind of like, how long it is till I like to read a Captain America story where he's Captain America. So I'd like to read a Rogue Son story where he's Rogue Son. So that's why I've been kind of down on this story arc. But this was a really good issue. I enjoyed this issue thoroughly. Sea of Red, I thought, was a frightful vampire book. I don't know that one, I don't think. Then we got a new issue. What is this? Number 4 of Swan Songs. And this had an interesting ending. You should see what he's holding here. Bad libs, i.e. Mad Libs. You know what Mad Libs are, Paolo?
Yes. Not a fan.
I was never a huge fan of it either. But this is a guy who's in prison. And he loves doing Mad Libs. He's got Mad Libs, Sad Libs, Bad Libs. He's got a bunch of different ones. And he's being released on prison this day. So he gets released from prison. His brother picks him up. And it's done by Maxwell Prince is the writer. He's the ice cream man writer. And the art is by Caitlin Yarsky. There's a different artist each issue. I think there's going to be 6 issues of it. And Good Old Neon does the letters and design. Okay. But Mad Libs is a theme throughout this comic, because that's sort of his area he can control, because you get out, you find out kind of his older brother controls him on the outside. And of course, he was controlled on the inside by prison. So then his brother immediately gets him involved in a bank heist. And he's just like, no, I want to go straight. I don't want to go back to prison. And so it ends with he's like the wheelman of the bank heist. And things go wrong. And it ends with him not knowing what to do. But you can do the Mad Libs to write the ending. Do you want to get him out of this or not get him out of this? So it's a weird, interesting Mad Libs ending. Even though it's kind of gimmicky, I still liked it.
Interesting.
Rick Remender wrote it. Okay, As a Sea of... I may have bought the first issue of Sea of Red. That's all I remember from it. What was that, Wilson?
I was going to say, I was never really a big fan of Mad Libs. Kids around me that had it believed it to be one of the funniest things they ever saw. You got to fill this out. You got to fill this out. Give me a this, give me a that. And you do it, and it's like, isn't that great? And it's like, it did nothing for me.
You're like, I got to know what an adverb is? Come on.
Yeah. It's like, you're making me doing a lot of work.
I'm in the 5th grade. I barely can know what an adjective is. I certainly don't know what an adverb is. You're killing me here.
Or they would just go for the same words. Fart was always used. And just either, whatever dirty word a kid might have known.
Yep.
So it would be like either fart or butt. Maybe a curse would be tossed in it, like a damn. But again.
Yeah. When they gave me that, hey, what am I supposed to do with this? Well, you write whatever you want. Why?
It's supposed to be funny.
If I write whatever I want, I'll write everything. I'm not gonna put some random word in the middle of a sentence.
Let's see. The last comic I got this week is The Forged, magazine sized, 44 pages in this one, I think, for $6.99. So, 2 Marvel comics for less than the price of 2 Marvel comics. I'm just enjoying. Once again, this is one I'm just enjoying, kind of living with these characters. The Forged are a military team of 5 women who, in the first, what issue is this? 5 in the first 4 issues. No, 3 issues even. This is the second part of this story arc. In the first 3 issues, they threw you right into a mission. It's like a sci-fi book. Threw you into this mission in space where they had to go and do this stuff. And the character with the blue hair there is the Empress. She runs the whole empire. And there's like clones of her that are her priestesses who do things that have power in the empire. And the Forged are her, one of her military teams in the empire. So the last 2 issues are sort of, they're back, which is 88 pages. So that's a good amount of pages. They came back from the mission. They're somehow ended up in the royal palace, and this has been all their downtime. And there's been lots of like political intrigue going on, not to do with them, but behind the scenes of sort of the ramifications of their mission. So I've just been, and they've got all this backstory stuff in the back that I just can't be bothered to read. I'm not that into world building. I'm okay with the comic, but I don't need a Starman's daily routine. I'm okay not knowing a Starman's daily routine, but I know some people really like backstory. My friend Rob loves backstory. But I just don't. So I usually pass on all that stuff. But lots of cool diagrams and things. But like I said, I've been enjoying the good series, I gotta say. If you're into sort of sci-fi, military action comics, this is a good one. But you got to put it in your magazine box. It doesn't fit in your comic box. And this week's reread, I reread something too, something fairly recent. Night Fever. This is the latest Brubaker and Phillips. I think I got this like a month or 2 ago. But here's another thing about reading. First time, I often find like I read all my comics twice before I put them away. And with something like a graphic novel, I find myself reading it too quickly the first time through. Because like the first time through, it's kind of like, well, what's this about? What's going to happen? So it's like sometimes I'm so busy figuring out what is going on, what is this comic about, what's going to happen, that I am not really into what's happening. And I think that's just the nature of reading. But the second time through, I went through it more slowly and I caught more of the nuance. I definitely liked it better the second time through. And it's fairly short for a graphic novel. What is that? 100 pages or so? I don't even know. But not one of their longer works, so it's easy to read through a second time. But though one thing I also have to say is, who's the colorist? The colorist, I think, is Sean Phillips' son. What's his name? Jacob Phillips, who's a pretty good artist. He does that Texas Blood. But his coloring is pretty good, but I don't think he was as good as Elizabeth Breitweiser was. Elizabeth Breitweiser used to color all their stuff. I think before she got caught up in Comicsgate with her husband, whoever that is, who became Comicsgaters. And I think that Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips abandoned her and got Jacob Phillips to cover it, who's pretty good, but I just think Elizabeth Breitweiser was better. So I kind of miss her on the coloring. But second read through, better than the first read through. Do you guys find that sometimes? Do you read Like if you read a graphic novel twice, will you like it better the second time? Do you
Well, I
rush
usually
through it too
I
quickly?
only get back to them sometime later,
Yeah,
and
me
sometimes I
too,
don't.
usually. But do you sometimes find yourself rushing through one, going, "I gotta slow down"?
I do sometimes feel that when I do read something, especially the first go around,
Right?
I read it too quickly.
Because you want to know what's
Mm,
going to happen.
Yeah, you kind of want to
right.
know what's happening, what's going on. If the art is really good, that may slow me down enough.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes I may read through it just to read it and then
Right.
go back and then look at it
Yeah.
and then kind of like go through it a few times. Because there'll be books, I can't think of one right now, but there'll be books that will kind of stay with me for a few days where it's like, I got to go back and
Yeah. Yeah.
see,
That
did I
happens too.
understand it the first time because I might have read it too quickly.
Brightweiser is the best. She is. I liked her stuff a lot. Yeah, because Seth being one of the exceptions, most books are about the plot.
Right.
So you want to find out what happens. I'll still never forget one guy I knew who, once again, this is back when I was young. We were all collecting Marvel and DC. Whatever new whatever new comic came out he was reading that month, the first thing he'd do is look at the last page. And I'd be like, what? Every new comic he got, the first thing he'd do would look at the last page to see the cliffhanger. I'd be like,
Wow.
what?
I
That
hated if
makes
I
me,
skipped a page when I was reading. It was like, oh, I saw something I didn't want to see. Ooh.
yeah. Not he's the only person I've ever seen do that with a comic. But it was crazy. I was like, what? He's like, oh man, I can't even believe that. I'm like, you haven't even read it yet, and you know how it ends. That's just how he read it.
Yeah,
I guess he
that's
wanted to know
wild.
how it ends before he started reading it.
I didn't like the way that ending looks. I'm not even going to bother with this book.
Maybe. I don't know if he ever did that.
I don't know. That's wild.
I found that crazy. Why would someone do that? Blew my mind.
Never made sense for me. So I have something to share.
What do you got for it?
I was going through some um I was on a TikTok video and someone had asked a question. How would you approach something in design wise? So I had
Right.
grabbed the book. I grabbed like the first sketchbook. I had an old sketchbook nearby, and I grabbed the first sketchbook, and I opened it up to do the demonstration. But in the sketchbook, I found a whole pack of used receipts of back in my Marvel days. Oh, it's hard to see.
Vouchers?
Vouchers.
Let's see. Let's zoom in on that.
So this is the used voucher.
That was that's the carbon copy that we got.
Right. From it, this light is so bright. This turn is, you can see it. And it
Let's
was
see.
so bright that this was, I don't know at what point that I needed this information. I ended up writing on it because most of
2196. What was the book you were working on? What
this is, I think, Marvel Mega. So it might
Marvel
have been,
Mega.
so yeah, it was the I think
2 hours, $25 an hour, $50? Or is that
so.
2
It's
pages?
it's 2 pages of coloring.
2 pages of coloring.
So this is 96, 2 pages of coloring. This is what I must have did some coloring at Marvel, but it was going to be used and published for Wizard magazine.
Ah,
So
3 pages, $75.
yep. So $25
Somewhere
a page of
actually,
coloring.
I have tucked away my first Marvel voucher.
Did you?
Yeah.
Now those two just happen to be written, and then it looks like it was just rewritten over it to see what it is. But most of them looks like this, where you can't really see.
Right, because
You know,
it's the
it's the
third
third
page of a
one
carbon.
of the carbon. And it's like, oh, look at these. This is like, it was fun to find and go, look, there's visual proof that I worked at Marvel.
As if anybody knows what a carbon paper is anymore.
Exactly. And that's the thing. It's like I'm looking at all these, and this is like here's one of the 6 pages of coloring again for a wizard thing,
Wow.
and an issue of Marvel Vision. So
Look at that.
I was doing a lot of coloring work for Marvel Vision. So this was I think Tim Toohey was the editor
right.
of the book, and it was like because it doesn't say editorial improvement, so I guess they sign it later. Because this is yeah, these because I would turn it's carbon copy, so this is the 3rd page. So the other 2 pages, I guess, would have had who was the editor on the projects.
Huh.
So I don't even think I even have a copy of Marvel Mega.
Whatever that might be.
Whatever that was, because I have a few of them that says Marvel Mega, and then I have a few that says Marvel Vision. So these could have been what Marvel Vision was beforehand. It could have called it something else. And I have the very first thing that I ever colored for Marvel officially. And this is Ghost Rider 2099, issue 25, the last issue. And this was the first thing that I ever got published in a regular Marvel comic that wasn't part of production. It wasn't part of Wizard or any of the magazines. It wasn't part of the convention stuff. This was Joe Andriani going, "Hey, can you color a pinup for me?" And that was Ghost Rider 2099, issue number 25, a 1-page pinup. Was my very first thing that I colored. No credit in the book, and it was the last issue of the book. And what's funny, a lot of my very first books were all the last issue of that particular series that they were getting rid of. And it's like, oh, so I'm being hired on a book and then working on it.
Did Joe Andriani die?
He did pass away a number of years ago.
Yeah. He was young too. I mean, he was like younger than me. I remember hearing he died.
Yeah, I do recall. I don't remember what year it was, but it was sometime back,
like a decade ago or something.
Probably because we were all still young back then too when he died.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure I'm older than he was when he passed. He was working in the industry for a while.
Tit Goblin still uses invoices with carbon copies every day for orders. Whoa, that's Canada for you.
Yeah,
they're keeping the carbon paper industry alive.
The 21st century did not reach Canada yet.
Yeah, I was just thinking if our love for comics isn't about reading them 4, 6, and 8 times as kids. Yeah, my wife and her sister read the last page of novels before. Oh, boy, more nuts. Yeah, that's why I read my comics twice these days too, because I think I picked up the habit maybe sometime in the late 90s, early 2000s, because what I found myself doing was I'd get my comics for the week, I'd read them within a day or two, and then file them away because I file my comics away, and then I'd like forget I ever read them. It'd be kind of like, oh yeah, what was it? So that's why I found myself, I'll leave them out for a week or two now, and I'll read them twice. That way I remember them. Because I just wasn't remembering. I was like reading it and then putting away, reading it and then putting away, reading it and then putting away.
I would, when I get the books, when I bought my stack of books, I would read them all during that week. Go back and reread them. Go back and reread them right up to the point of getting new sets of comics.
Right.
The next week. So those were Thursdays. So I would buy the book on Thursday or Friday, have that whole weekend to read everything, reread them, and then as the new sets of books are coming out, read them all and then put them away. So I probably read every book maybe 3 or 4 times. Read the whole books and then maybe read the
as a kid, I read them over and over.
Read Stan's Soapbox. Have it out till the next issue comes in.
Right.
And then, because before I was even bagging and boarding them, I kept them in a shoebox. Right. And then once like the next set of books came to replace them, then they went into like milk crates. At that point, that's how I was reading my books.
That's what I was going back to. My child, more along the lines of my childhood way of reading it. Because, like I said, they'd be out for 2 hours. I'd bring them
Yeah.
home. Maybe I'd read. If I read some right away, I'd put it's not. I don't even know it exists.
When I was
I
reading
read
them
it
in
and put it away
college,
within an hour.
and then by the time I got to college, what I would do is I would have them, because I went to school in Dobbs Ferry. I would pick up the books from the comic book shop. On the way home, since it was a good hour and a half bus ride, I would read through my books because I had this weird little thing with me that I wanted to read my books first before my brothers end up reading them. So
I
it's
can
like
understand that.
so when I brought them home, you could read any book in this pile because I read them already, but I have to be the first one to read this set of books. So I would read them, just about all of them, on my way home. Got them home, reread anything that night that I enjoyed and wanted to read it again. And then those books would be out until the next set of books came in. And then by the time the new issue of whatever that book was, then they got put into bags and boards, and then put fully away. Because the only time I would go back and reread like a run was maybe at the end of the year. I would go through them all, and then I wouldn't touch them again for like 2 or 3 years before I like redid the bags or redid the box and go, okay, I want to read a run or something like that. And then eventually, I remember then the years between rebagging them would get longer and longer. And then to be like, last time I did like a mega look through my books was when I was working at Marvel. And I bought a whole slew of bags, and I'm going through them, and there's nothing more disgusting than seeing a bag of years of comic bags taken out. The boards you can pretty much reuse, but the bags, they almost become gelatin.
Those are the old bags, yeah.
And and I was like that when I saw that, it's like, oh, I can't do this with these bags anymore. I got to really go through them. But and I'm sure there's a box somewhere that's probably a solid block of acid boards or something.
All right, well, we should sign off for the evening.
Okay.
Let Paolo get to bed, even though I'm yawning more than he is.
I am going to the Amadora Comics Festival tomorrow.
Oh, cool!
Oh, cool!
Yeah, so I'm taking my cousin's daughters. They're 7. They like drawing, so maybe they'll become addicted to this, and I can show them a path that will never make them any money.
There you go.
Is what's his name, Coelho, going to be
there? If he is,
tell him I liked his Gatsby.
Okay, we do have an exhibit, but I'm not sure if it's going to be on the central place because since that thing is organized by City Hall, they spread out the exhibits all over town, and you can't walk from one to the other. You have to take the car.
All right. Well, like I said, I'm the one yawning. Everybody have a good week out there.
Take care, everybody.
Hold on. Let me see if I can. What was it? 2. Get some balloons going here. Peace.
Try to thumbs up. Maybe that will do it.
The double thumbs up. There we go.
There you
double
go.
Thumbs up. Everybody have a good one out there tonight.
Take care.